Chapter 1. The apartment above the bakery. The apartment was hardly larger than a train car. Its windows streaked with the residue of city air, and its walls lined with mismatched shelves that sagged under the weight of books. Downstairs, the bakery's ovens never seemed to cool. The scent of cinnamon rolls and caramelized sugar rose through the floorboards at all hours, mingling with the faint bitterness of burnt coffee grounds. For most tenants, it might have been intolerable. For Alyssa, it was a comfort. Proof that the world carried on with its noise and commerce while she remained hidden in plain sight. To the people who saw her come and go, she was a quiet woman in her late 20s, always with a canvas tote bag slung across her shoulder and a paperback tucked under one arm. She rented the apartment under the name Anna Pierce, an alias simple enough to blend into any form. She paid cash for nearly everything, except for the utilities, which were mysteriously always credited before she could mail her check. Her neighbors thought she worked irregular hours at the bookstore a few blocks away. Sometimes she did. Sometimes she didn't. Most days began the same way. Alyssa would brew a pot of black tea, open the curtains to let in the weak morning light, and settle at her desk, a battered wooden table she had salvaged from a thrift store. The table bore knife scars, rings from mugs, and a faint burn mark near the corner, as though someone had once set a candle too close. To Alyssa it was perfect. It had history without context, story without author, and in its imperfections she felt less alone. She pulled her laptop close, the keys worn smooth from years of pounding them into submission. The screen flickered to life with a password only she knew, a string of characters unguessable even to the cleverest of siblings. And there it was, the world she had built in secret. Dozens of folders, each one labeled with the initials of a project or draft. Contracts scanned and stored in encrypted files. And most importantly, the manuscripts themselves, novels with names that readers across the globe devoured but never once associated with the quiet woman above the bakery. Alyssa Finch, her chosen pen name, was spoken in book clubs from New York to Tokyo. Her titles adapted into streaming series that fueled endless online discussions. Critics hailed her as a genius, a master of modern storytelling. But to her family, Alyssa was the girl who had squandered her potential. She allowed herself a small smile. The disconnect between their perception and her reality had once hurt her. Now it was her armor. When the words began to flow, Alyssa's fingers moved with urgency, as though she feared the story might evaporate if she hesitated. She wrote dialogue sharp enough to cut, scenes saturated with longing and betrayal. The characters often bore a resemblance to people she knew. A domineering parent with a voice like thunder, a sibling whose laughter curdled into mockery. Readers called her novels cathartic, raw, even devastating. They didn't know how literal that was. By late morning, she would have written several thousand words, sometimes more if the rhythm carried her. Then she would close the laptop, push back from the desk, and resume her other life, the visible one. She might walk to the bookstore for a shift, where she shelved titles by Alyssa Finch with deliberate detachment, or stop by the grocery store, where she used coupons despite the fact that her royalties could have purchased the entire building. Her family assumed she was drifting, wasting away her youth. They didn't know she managed multiple trusts, quietly funneling money to cover their crises. When her father's car mysteriously received a new transmission, or when her mother's hospital bill was inexplicably erased, they credited fate, charity, or perhaps the kindness of an old friend. No one suspected Alyssa. That was how she preferred it. That afternoon, as the bells above the bakery door jingled with the stream of customers below, Alyssa paused in her writing to glance at the framed photo on her bookshelf. It was the only family picture she kept, a faded print from a summer vacation years ago. Everyone was smiling, but even in the stillness of the photograph, she could see the subtle distance. Her father's hand resting firmly on her brother's shoulder while hers hung awkwardly at her side. She looked at that photo not out of affection but as a reminder. She had left once before. She could leave again. Her phone buzzed on the desk. A message lit up the screen. Dinner tomorrow. Don't be late. We need to talk. It was from her mother. No greeting. No question. Just expectation. Alyssa exhaled slowly, pressing the phone face down. Tomorrow would be another performance. Another round of feigned small talk, subtle critiques, and invisible walls. She would endure it because that was what she always did. But somewhere deep inside, she knew her patience was thinning. For now she returned to her desk, hands hovering above the keys. The cursor blinked like a pulse, waiting. She inhaled the scent of sugar and cinnamon from below, then began again, her words carving a truth that only strangers in distant cities would ever recognize. And in that moment, hidden above the bakery, Alyssa was both invisible and infinite. Chapter 2. Dinner with the family. The car service idled at the curb like a patient animal, engine purring against the slush of the street. Alyssa took a breath before opening the door, letting the winter air cool the heat gathering under her collar. The driver glanced at her in the rearview and offered a cordial nod. He would wait, he always did, because the Cartwrights tipped well and liked to keep their options open. The Cartwright house sat back from the road, framed by bare-limbed lindens and a sweep of lawn rimmed with frost. Light shone through the tall windows in pale squares, and somewhere inside, the steady hum of a string quartet played from a discreetly hidden speaker. A pair of stone urns flanked the front steps, newly replanted with winter pansies, an indulgence in a season that killed most everything else. The door opened before she reached the top step. A housekeeper, Maris knew efficient, held it for her. "Good evening, Miss Alyssa." The tone was careful, the way staff used names as if they were china. "Evening, Maris," Alyssa said. "How are you settling in?" "Very well, miss. Thank you." A small smile, then a glance past Alyssa's shoulder toward the drive, calibrating arrivals as if she were reading a clock. Inside, the foyer gleamed. The marble floor wore the faint sheen of fresh polish, and a portrait of a Cartwright ancestor assessed the room with a painter's idea of benevolence. The air smelled faintly of beeswax and lemon, and beneath that, the savory promise of dinner. Her mother materialized from the formal living room in a suit the color of champagne. Pearls nestled at the throat. "There you are," she said, in the tone of someone who has been waiting in a way that must be acknowledged. "Right on time, darling. You look comfortable." "Thank you," Alyssa said. She had chosen black slacks, a dark silk blouse, boots polished until they reflected the hallway lights. Neutral. Unmemorable. Her mother's kiss grazed her cheek without landing. "Your brother's here already. Your father's in the study taking a call. Investors." The last word lifted like a brag disguised as a burden. "Coats to the left, love." Alyssa hung her coat in a cedar-scented closet and, for a moment, laid her palm against the sleeve. It felt like pressing a hand to one's own shoulder in a mirror, quiet, private reassurance. Then she let it go. In the living room, Sibling B stood with one elbow hooked over the mantel, wine glass catching firelight. He wore success like a cologne, noticeable, insistently present. "Lissy," he said, with the unearned intimacy of a nickname he had never asked permission to revive. "Look who crawled out of her book cave." "Good to see you too," she said, and took the seat furthest from the hearth. The fire's heat dried the air, tightening her skin. "Finished anything lately?" He swirled the wine and made a show of sniffing it. "Manuscripts. Resumes. Anything." "Reading," Alyssa said. "Always reading." "Reading is leisure," he pronounced as if setting down a law. "People mistake it for work. So does posting. Everyone's posting, no one's building." Her mother fluttered a hand. "Don't start." "Start what?" He smiled with his teeth. "A conversation?" "Speaking of reading," their mother said, turning to Alyssa too brightly, "I finally picked up that author you like so much. What's her name?" "Alyssa Finch. Everyone in the club's on about her." Alyssa's pulse tripped. "Oh, the new one," her mother said. "The one with the pianist and the sister so intense. The prose almost I admit I struggled with the first 100 pages. A bit bleak. But by the end I was sobbing in the kitchen like a madwoman. Your father thought someone had died." "Someone did," Sibling B said dryly. "In fiction." Their mother's eyes went soft with memory. "There's this paragraph where the sister says, 'It's not that one hates the stage. One just wishes to choose the audience.'" My heart, Alyssa. Like being seen through a keyhole. She laughed at herself, embarrassed. "Listen to me. At my age." The room shifted out of focus for a beat, as if the house had inhaled. Alyssa folded her hands, keeping them very still on her lap. "She's quite good," she said. "I'm hosting a charity thing next month," her mother continued. "Cancer research. We're trying to find a speaker with gravitas but not too political. The planning committee floated Alyssa Finch. Imagine. Of course she never appears. Very reclusive. Her agent said she prefers to let the work speak, la dita. But wouldn't it be something? That would be something, Sibling B said, pouring himself more wine. Book people are so romantic to civilians. One writes a thing, everyone claps, boom. Even you read her, their mother teased. You texted me a line last week. He gave a sheepish shrug. The pacing sufficient. Can't argue with product market fit. Alyssa excused herself to wash up, mouth suddenly dry. In the powder room, the wallpaper's gold fretwork jittered in the mirror's reflection. She ran cool water over her wrists and watched the pulse in her neck calm. In her bag, her phone vibrated. A message from her agent. A photo of a bookstore window in Paris draped in Alyssa Finch jackets. Captioned, "Sold out again. France adores you." Beneath it, a second message, "Heads up. Studio wants to extend the option. Call tomorrow." Alyssa powered the phone off and slid it back into the pocket as if she had just hidden a weapon. When she returned, Parent A was already in the dining room, standing at the head of the table like a general about to review the troops. He cut a handsome figure even now, silver hair, tailored suit, posture that suggested he was both accustomed to authority and untroubled by its weight. "Sit," he said, not unkindly, but with the tone of a person whose requests always happen to be orders. "Time is money, and I haven't found a way to invest the former." They took their places. The first course arrived. Shaved fennel with citrus and a whisper of something floral. Parent A waited until the staff withdrew before speaking, fork idle in his hand. "Your mother tells me you're still at that bookstore," he said. "Yes," Alyssa said. He considered the salad as if it might answer for her. "At least it keeps you busy." Sibling B grinned at her. A complicit child in an old family joke. "I said exactly that earlier." Their mother placed a napkin on her lap with precision, as if aligning it with an invisible grid. "It keeps you around people," she said. "That's something." "It's a job, Mother," Alyssa said mildly. "It's a pastime," Parent A corrected. "Which is fine for some. But you," he paused, searching for a word that would both flatter and impugn. "You've always had potential. When someone is gifted, leisure curdles into waste." "Dad's been meeting a young partner," Sibling B interjected, eager. "A phenom. 28. Already managing 8 figures. You would like him, Alyssa. Hyperstructured. Systems for everything. He'd have you optimized in a week." He laughed at his own wit. "We could have you cash flowing by summer." Alyssa took a drink of water to keep from responding. "Don't tease," their mother said to Sibling B, though she was smiling. "She could do worse than learn to invest." "I manage," Alyssa said, but it came out softer than intended. Parent A dabbed the corner of his mouth, attention pivoting with the lawyer's focus. "What does manage mean exactly?" "It means one pays one's bills," Alyssa said. "On time." The next course arrived. A delicate soup in porcelain so thin the candlelight glowed through it. The staff moved like a choreography the family never needed to see. Conversation slid around the edges of real things. A donor scandal, a nephew's boarding school feats, an opera whose third act everyone agreed had been indulgent. "Speaking of indulgent," Sibling B said, cutting into the main course without waiting, "a friend of mine is putting together a venture fund for media-adjacent plays. Not content per se, ancillaries, talent management, events, that kind of thing. Low risk, high upside if you pick the right influencers." He flicked a glance at Alyssa as if tossing her a bone. "If you had any savings, even a small stake, you could learn. Feel useful." "Useful to whom?" Alyssa asked. "To yourself," he said, faux benevolent. "And, the family. No strings." Parent A set down his fork with quiet deliberation. "We are not in the business of pressuring our daughter into anything," he said, then added. "However, learning to shepherd one's future is not pressure. It's adulthood." Their mother lifted her glass. "To adulthood," she said lightly. They drank. The toast collapsed into silence. "Do you ever think about what you'll leave behind?" Parent A asked, turning fatherly in the way of a teacher who believes the student will thank him later. "A mark. A legacy. A structure that outlives you." Alyssa considered the many structures already built in her name that wasn't. The trusts. the scholarships for first-generation writers established in the quiet after midnight, the charity checks that arrived just when a small theater was about to go dark, signed by foundations with forgettable names. Whole ecosystems lived because she had imagined them. She thought of the letters forwarded by her agent, underlined passages, confessions from strangers who had felt seen and less alone. She thought of translation royalties from countries her parents had never learned to pronounce. "I think about it," she said, "and let the truth sit between them utterly unrecognizable." "Good," Parentess said, mollified. "Because drifting is fine at 22. At your age." "At her age," Sibling B echoed. "Plenty of people have already built things they can touch. See, something they can take to a bank." "Your sister is not you," their mother said, a little too fast, as if performing fairness might make it real. Then to Alyssa, warmer, "You know we only want you to be safe, darling. Life is kinder to people with plans." The words stung because they were not untrue. Alyssa smiled. "I have plans," she said. "Like what?" Sibling B asked, delighted by the chance to pounce. "Like dinner," she said. "Right now." Their mother laughed, relieved at the dodge. Parent A did not. "Sarcasm is the language of people who fear real questions," he said, but he returned to his plate. Dessert arrived in a parade of sugar. Custards with burnt tops, sugared citrus peel, dark chocolate shards stacked like slate. Her mother adored ceremony, and the table gleamed with it. A single candle's flame trembled in an unnoticed draft. "You'll appreciate this," her mother said, fishing for lightness. "At lunch today, Sonia tried to convince me to buy into a book club subscription. The hook is that they get authors to record personal messages for members. Imagine Alyssa Finch reading your name into a phone." Sibling B snorted. "She'd have to leave her cave first." "Apparently she does not appear," her mother conceded, as if narrating the habits of a rare bird. "But they say her agent is charming. Anyway, I told Sonia that felt like paying for a postcard when one could have a conversation." "Some people," Parent A said, "confuse privacy with superiority. It's unbecoming. If one has been given a platform, one owes visibility." Alyssa kept her face smooth. "Some people do their best work in quiet," she said. "Quiet is one thing," he said. "Hiding is another. A refusal to be known corrodes the duty one owes to family." He lifted his glass eyes on her. "Don't hide. It makes the rest of us feel like we've done something wrong." The sentence slipped under her ribs and found a familiar bruise. She held his gaze, willing her voice to stay level. "Perhaps the rest of us are fine," she said. "And one is simply different." "One," her brother echoed, amused. "Listen to her. Like a novelist describing a specimen." Her mother set down her spoon with a click. "Enough. Please. This was meant to be pleasant." Alyssa softened her shoulders, letting the tension drain out as if someone had opened a valve. "It is," she said. "The custard is perfect." After coffee, the men drifted toward the study, the gravitational pull of deals and leather chairs irresistible. Her mother lingered, straightening a napkin already straight. "Walk with me," her mother said. Not a request, an old choreography. They paced the gallery hung with landscapes no one had seen in person. "Your father means well. You know that." "I know," Alyssa said. "He thinks you're bored. That you've talked yourself into a small life because it's easier than taking a risk." Alyssa's smile was gentle. "He admires risk when it looks like him." Her mother's lips tugged in a private concession. "Perhaps. But he's not wrong about one thing. Time is accelerating. For all of us." The pearl at her throat rolled under her fingertip. "You were always the one who disappeared into books. Even at 5 you'd vanish behind a chair with a stack and come out at dinner with a new face on. Frightened me a little. How complete it was." "It felt safe," Alyssa said. "And now?" Her mother's eyes were sharp, undeceived. "Now it feels like the only way to hear one's own voice." They paused before a landscape of a storm-swollen sea, paint thick as frosting in the white caps. Her mother studied it as if searching for an exit in the brushstrokes. If you ever come into money," she said lightly, the way one nudges a topic toward the center of the table, "you must let us help. There are ways to ensure it doesn't eat you alive. Money is a wonderful servant and a terrible master." Alyssa considered the trusts with their cool, careful rules, the accountants who signed NDAs so airtight they might as well have been divers. "I'll keep that in mind," she said. Back in the foyer, Coates appeared as if conjured. The driver had been summoned without her asking. Her mother cupped Alyssa's elbow, warm, perfumed, earnest. "You don't have to be useful," she said, surprising herself with the choice of word. "But you do have to be here. With us." A breath. "Promise me that much." Alyssa looked at her. At the woman who had just confessed to sobbing over a paragraph Alyssa had written and would never claim. There was tenderness in it, twisted up with control, like two vines choking the same trellis. "I'll try," she said, because it was kinder than no. Outside, the cold rushed her like a greeting. The car door closed with a softened thud, sealing her back into the capsule of her own choices. The driver waited for a destination, and she gave him the one above the bakery. City lights streamed past, gold coins thrown down a dark well, while words assembled in her head. Not lines yet. Accents. Gestures. The curl of her brother's smile when he smelled blood. The exact pitch of her father's assurance when he confused certainty with virtue. The shape of her mother's hand smoothing a napkin that did not need smoothing. A novelist's ledger. Debits and credits. Who owed what? What one could forgive. When she climbed the narrow stairs, the bakery's heat wrapped around her like a shawl. The bell below jingled, a late customer hungry for sugar and comfort. Alyssa hung her coat on the same bent nail and took the long breath that reset the day's balance. At the desk, she woke the laptop and the machine blinked awake. A conspirator. She did not open the ongoing manuscript. She opened a fresh document and titled it with something that would mean nothing to anyone else. On the blank page, the first sentence arrived with the inevitability of rain. "A family can be a house with the lights on and no doors one can walk through." She wrote the second sentence before she had finished reading the first, and then the third, and then the shape of the chapter revealed itself like a negative developing in a tray. The dinner table. The portrait. The toast to adulthood. The line about hiding that struck the softest parts. She captured the cadence without copying the surface, changed the wine to whiskey, the chandelier to a bank of unblinking recessed lights. Protective camouflage for a truth that was not negotiable. Her phone, still powered down, lay face down beside a stack of dog-eared paperbacks. The agent's text, the studio's inquiry, Paris. All of it could wait. Above the bakery, sugar and cinnamon thickened the air until it felt almost sweet to breathe. The cursor kept time with her pulse. She didn't notice when an hour slipped, then another. Words accrued, subtle weights on a scale tilting toward solvency, the only kind that mattered. The kind where one's self-respect did not have to be borrowed against a family's ledger. When she finally stopped, the room had tilted into late night. She saved the pages in 3 places by force of habit. Cloud encrypted drive, a thumb drive disguised as a brass key she wore on a chain. She stood and rolled her neck until it cracked, then crossed to the window and pushed it open an inch. Cold slid in and licked the heat from her skin. Down on the sidewalk, a couple laughed too loudly at a joke that would evaporate before morning. A delivery truck sighed like a tired animal as it pulled away. Alyssa touched the brass key at her throat. No prayer, no vow. Just contact. Proof of the thing she had built without witnesses. In a house across town, a woman who loved a paragraph without knowing its author was sleeping. In another room, a man who preferred certainty to curiosity was already drafting a speech for a future he believed he owned. In the guest room, a brother replayed his own lines and decided they had landed. And here, above the bakery, a novelist who did not appear anywhere was writing them all into being and setting them free. The draft of the chapter sat open on the screen, its last line waiting to be finished. She returned to the desk and added a single sentence that tasted like resolve in her mouth as she spoke it softly into the room, testing the rhythm for the audio version that would be recorded by someone else's voice. One can be present without being seen. One can be seen without being known. She paused, then added one more. It is the second that starves a person. It is the first that keeps her alive. Chapter 3. The quiet machinery morning broke with the low murmur of delivery trucks and the bakery's first batch of dough surrendering to heat. Steam fogged the upper panes of the apartment's windows. A pale sun pushed against the glass as if trying to peer in on a secret. Alyssa woke before the alarm she never set, the body recalling its own schedule better than any clock. She lay still for a moment and listened to the building, the rattle of pipes, the hiss of radiators, the distant staccato of a mixer below beating air into egg whites. The ordinary noises steadied her in the way a metronome steadies a musician, ticks that allowed for measure. Tea curtains, desk. The small rituals placed the day in an order no one else had to understand. She read what she had written the night before and made 3 precise deletions, then added a paragraph whose sentences ran long on purpose, breathless and paralyzed at once. The new words laid a faint lattice over the old, strengthening the shape without thickening it. Satisfied, she saved twice out of habit and slid the brass key on its chain along the desk until it rested under her palm. A contact, a check, a private benediction. The laptop chimed softly with a calendar reminder that never carried a label. A call routed through an encrypted app and scheduled by a person who existed only as a title in public. Agent, not friend, not confidant, though the relationship carried traces of both. Alyssa inserted a small, scuffed USB security token into the laptop and waited for the status icon to turn from amber to green. It did, and the call drew itself into the room like a line through fog. Mara here, the voice said, bright but careful. Good morning, Elle, good morning. Morning, Alyssa said. She preferred her own name in this room, even when speaking to the guardian of the other one. If anyone ever swept logs, they would find only audio without labels, a voice without identity, and even that would expire from the server in hours. One took precautions not because paranoia was romantic but because it was practical. How are you? Mara asked, which in their language meant any fires. Solvent, Alyssa said. It was their second word for fine. Good, Mara answered. 2 quick things. Paris is still sold out, they're doing window displays through the weekend. The studio wants to extend the option on Hinterlands. They're talking showrunner attachments. There would be an extra bump up front plus escalators if it goes to series. Same conditions, Alyssa said. No publicity obligations. No appearances. No behind-the-scenes features. Of course, Mara said. They know the rules. They pretend they don't, and then they remember who's writing their tentpole. Also, there's a gala sniffing around for a keynote. Cancer research. Very glossy. They floated a 7-figure donation match if you would record a short message. Alyssa looked at her reflection in the black part of the laptop screen. The ghost of a face hovering over icons. A message from the foundation is fine. Not from me. Understood. Paper rustled faintly on the other end, though Alyssa knew Mara kept everything digital. The sound was a tell to buyers that someone had brought receipts to the table. The other thing is less fun. We got a drip of interest from a financial journalist. They're doing a piece on the invisible rich. People who live modestly in expensive cities while moving enormous sums quietly. Your trusts are unlinked and clean. Henley swears it's airtight. But I like you to know what winds are blowing. Thank you, Alyssa said. The name Henley steadied her. The attorney who had taken her insistence on secrecy not as a quirk but as a mandate. Every LLC folded into another like paper figures nested in a box. Each foundation had a board that consisted of people who preferred results to credit. The trusts bore names that could belong to anyone. Common Room, Eastover, Thicket. No Cartwrights. No Finches. No Alara. No Alyssa. Mara's tone softened half a notch. How was dinner? Useful, Alyssa said and left it there. Copy that, Mara said, adopting the joke as a shield. Okay. Send me the pages when you feel like it. No pressure. Just, France does adore you. France adores ghosts, Alyssa said. Perhaps, Mara replied. But they buy their books. A pause, the click of a calendar closing. One more thing. This is strange, but I promised. A small theater on the south side is weeks from folding. They wrote a letter to the foundation, someone handed it to me at a reading, actually like a relic. They stage new work about silence, sign language performances. No spoken dialogue, experimental music. Beautiful. They need a specific number. It's not large compared to your usual grants. Send it, Alyssa said. We'll do it. Through Thicket. Done, Mara said. You're good, you know that? Alyssa glanced at the brass key again. One is consistent, she said. Same difference, Mara murmured and ended the call. Downstairs, the bakery bell chimed 6 times in quick succession. Then once more like a laugh that couldn't help itself. Time to leave the invisible world long enough to keep the visible one plausible. She closed the laptop, brushed crumbs of eraser from the desk. She used pencils for scene maps and still rubbed them out by hand, and tugged on her boots. The bookstore where she sometimes worked had taken up residence in a former locksmith's shop, and some days the smell of oil still rose from the floorboards. Keys, books, objects that open things. She liked the symmetry. On the walk there, she passed the small theater Mara had mentioned in an article once. A chalkboard outside listing this week's shows in looping script. The hours didn't align with hers. She had never gone in. She paused now, briefly, and pictured a stage lit like an aquarium, actors signing to one another in an aurora of hands. She imagined paying the rent on a building like that and felt that rare, clean joy, the kind that did not rot into pride. "Hey, Anna," Rowan said when she pushed through the bell above the bookstore door. Rowan stocked new releases with a speed that suggested either zeal or escape. Maybe both. Hair in a knot that had given up being tidy, a smudge of graphite on the back of one thumb. "Can you do the window after you clock in? We got the Finch shipment." "The Finch shipment," Alyssa repeated, as if the words were new vocabulary. "Which title?" "The Threshold Rooms in hardcover," Rowan said, face brightening with a fan's unembarrassed pleasure. "They sent us that fancy foil-embossed slipcase version too. Corporate thinks it justifies the price point. They're right. People pick it up just to feel it." Alyssa laughed softly. "I'll do the window." They worked in an easy rhythm, the way people do when neither demands conversation but both accept it. Rowan told a story about a customer who had tried to return a book because the ending wasn't appropriate for brunch. Alyssa taped spines at angles in the window so each could catch light, interleaving them with cut paper silhouettes of doors and thresholds she had made last night, her scissors describing curves as her mind rewrote a scene. By mid-morning, the store was a hive of the gentle, earnest commerce bookshops cultivate. Teenagers with gift cards, a retired professor lecturing a patient niece on modernism, a nurse in scrubs looking dazed with fatigue and grateful to be among squares of color. A woman in her 50s approached the counter with the Threshold Rooms held like a sacrament. "Have you read this?" the woman asked Alyssa, eyes already wet, as if the book's covers were willows. "Yes," Alyssa said. "I finished it at 3 a.m. last night," the woman whispered, leaning in as if confiding mischief. "My husband had to be up at 5 and I thought, you selfish thing, but I couldn't stop. There's a line about grief making the hallway longer. I walked around the house after just walking the hallways." She laughed at herself, wiping under one eye with a knuckle. "Silly." "Not silly," Alyssa said. "The body tries to finish what the mind cannot." The woman nodded, grateful for a sentence to put her feeling in. "Would the author ever sign?" she asked, tentative. "I know she's private." "She doesn't do events," Alyssa said. "But," she glanced at the small stack of blind-embossed bookplates they kept behind the counter for book clubs. She took one and, without thinking too long about the transgression or the mercy of it, wrote in a steady hand, "For Nora, walk every hallway." From a fellow reader. She slid it across. "It's not the same," she said. "But sometimes a note is enough." The woman pressed the card to her chest. "More than enough," she said, then caught herself and added, "Thank you." Rowan watched that small exchange with curiosity but not suspicion. If anything, it softened something in his face she had always read as armor. "You always know what to say," he said later, shelving. "I stack books," she said. "You stack people too," he countered, as if it were a compliment he couldn't make sound casual. A quiet man had been browsing the essays section for nearly an hour. His coat draped over his arm in a way that suggested he was used to carrying cameras or instruments. He approached the counter near lunch, 2 paperbacks in hand and a folded notebook tucked under the top one. "Do you have a copy of Fugue for Lost Cities?" he asked, voice careful, a step gentler than the ambient noise around them. "We do," Alyssa said, leaving the register to lead him to travel writing. "It's on the middle shelf, just—" "I know where it is," he said, embarrassed, then smiled. "I just wanted someone to walk over here with me." She looked at him more closely then. The kind of face people wouldn't call handsome but would remember because the eyes listened. He took the book down and opened to a random page, as if trusting a coin toss to reveal a message. People did that more often than they admitted. "You like Finch?" he asked, still looking at the text as if reading it to her. Yes. Everyone says she's unknowable, he said lightly. But you talk about the books like they're listening. That's unusual. Books listen, Alyssa said. If one lets them. He turned a corner of the page down, a gesture she normally loathed. In his hands it looked like a dog lowering its head to be petted. Cal, he said, offering the name like a note. I teach music. Mostly adults who think they're too old. Alyssa, she said, then added. Anna here. The alias was an apron. One wore it in public and tried not to think about the fabric on the neck. Anna here, he echoed, as if making a small song of it. Do you ever go to the Thursday recitals at the conservatory? Students play for exactly 15 people, and everyone pretends it's a solemn secret. I don't, she said. The truth was that Thursdays belonged to a line item on a spreadsheet. A weekly review of the quiet machinery that kept Alyssa Finch separate from Alyssa Cartwright. Perhaps I will. Perhaps, he said, smiling like one who knows perhaps is a real answer. After he left, Rowan leaned an elbow on a cart. Danger, he said in a stage whisper. What sort? Alyssa asked, amused despite herself. The good kind, Rowan said. She shook her head and returned to the register, aware of an odd buoyancy at the edge of her ribs, a helium of possibility one had to keep from making one's voice high. The rest of the shift passed in a skein of small kindnesses, finding a battered edition of a poem someone's grandmother had recited, pointing a boy toward a book about maps, replacing the batteries in the talking toy that asked for the time until it learned to tell it. At closing, she broke down boxes in the back and slid a flat of pastries into her bag. End-of-day leftovers the bakery found easier to give to the bookshop than to throw away. On the walk home, she stopped at the theater with the chalkboard. Someone had redrawn the letters so they looked like they were moving. She stood and read the schedule even though she knew she could not make any of it. A young woman smoking under the awning looked at Alyssa looking and said, as if granting absolution, "You can come late and leave early. No one takes attendance." Thank you, Alyssa said. At the apartment, she turned on a single lamp and set the pastries on the counter for later. She washed her hands, dried them carefully, and placed the brass key on the desk like a seal. The laptop woke. Two-factor authentication, token, a series of small green lights turning on as systems aligned. The common room foundation dashboard, the Thicket ledger, a private portal Henley's office maintained with a sign-in that required both the key and a passphrase long enough to be poetry. She reviewed disbursements with a precision her father would have admired if he had ever considered such work real. Scholarships, funded. The housing initiative in a distant city whose name she liked because it sounded like a lullaby. Fully subscribed. The bakery downstairs. A note to herself to replace the coil in the temperamental oven when the owner refused to spend the money in February and limped the machine toward April. The small theater. A wire queued to land at 10 a.m. The next morning, which would look like luck to the person opening their email and like oxygen to the building that held their art. A message from Henley awaited in the portal. We are anticipating increased scrutiny on mortgage satisfaction filings in your parents' county. Purely procedural. However, if anyone in the tax office goes digging, they could notice that the entity that paid off the note is structured in a way that suggests sophistication. I can deflect. I would prefer forewarning if any family members start asking questions that would necessitate a response. She read it twice, the way one listens to a distant train and tries to determine if it is approaching or receding. She typed, "Thank you. No forewarning at this time. Will advise. Maintain deflection." She paused, then added, "If contact comes, it will be from my father, not the lender. Prepare a script that frames the payer as a pooled philanthropic instrument with confidentiality obligations to donors." Henley's reply arrived quickly, as if the attorney had been waiting with fingers above keys. Done. Script drafted. Also, your choice of pooled philanthropic instrument will be the death of me. A rare joke. She allowed herself a small smile. She moved to the manuscript then, but the morning's steadiness had changed shape. The letter Nora had pressed to her chest rose in her mind and made her want to write something for one person only, not an audience of millions. She opened a new file and began notes for a novella she would never publish. Private pages where a character learns to speak without opening her mouth, where a crowd leans in to listen because silence has taught them how. The phone buzzed where she had left it face down. She turned it over. A text from an unknown number. Conservatory recital Thursday 7 p.m. 15 chairs. One will be empty if you need it. Cal. No request. A map link. She pictured him folding his coat over a chair and not minding if no one sat in it. She typed nothing and let the message rest like a book on a nightstand one is not yet ready to open. The oven below clanged in a way that said old, and heat breathed through the floorboards in uneven waves. She wrote to the theater director from the common room account, formally, concisely, warmly, and scheduled the grant letter to arrive with the wire. Then she drafted a different email to the bakery's owner from a generic neighborhood association address, offering a small business resilience microgrant, earmarked for equipment maintenance. He would bristle at charity. He would accept participation in a program. Labels mattered. Some softened pride, some stabbed it. When she finally stood to stretch, City Light had thinned to its late-hour blue. She rinsed her cup, set it upside down on a towel, and paused with both hands on either side of the sink, the posture of someone bracing and someone praying, though she did neither. On the bookshelf, the family photo watched from its frame. A captured afternoon that had never told the whole story. She took it down, not to smash it, not to kiss it, but to dust it, running the corner of a cloth along the glass until it shone without distortion. When she rehung it, she moved it 1 inch to the left. It looked wrong for a moment and then right. The day had touched both lives cleanly. The window display, the stranger's gratitude, the agent's politics, the theater's reprieve, Henley's warning. She had been present and unseen, seen and unknown. And the difference once again fed the work. At the desk, she added a note to the chapter in progress. Bring the father's line about hiding earlier so the reader hears it twice before it shatters something. She closed the file and the machine sighed as if relieved to be allowed to rest. In bed, the brass key lay on the nightstand like a punctuation mark that could end a sentence or connect it to another. The bakery's last tray came out at midnight, the soft thud of sheet pans sliding home. Beyond the window, sirens threaded through the city with the sad authority of lullabies for grown people. Somewhere in that tall, polished house, her mother might be sleeping, a book face down on the coverlet, one hand cupping pearls. Somewhere else, her father might be awake, reading briefs for a meeting in which he would speak as though certainty were kindness. Her brother would be out late in a bar with low lighting that flatteringly forgot to end the night. And here above the bakery, the machinery that made a life no one recognized clicked into place without drama. The work would continue tomorrow, and the day after until something inevitable and chosen both changed it. On the cusp of sleep, a sentence arrived the way a tide does. First a whisper, then a sure sweep. The world will not always respect quiet, but quiet builds the world that outlasts applause. She didn't get up to write it down. She trusted the good ones now. They waited. They came back. The brass key, warm from her hand, caught the faintest streetlight and held it like a promise. Chapter 4. Fractures at the table. The invitation came in the same clipped manner her mother used for all family summons. A text message with no punctuation, no greeting, only coordinates. Sunday dinner. 6 sharp. Bring yourself. Alyssa stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering above the screen. She could almost hear her brother snicker behind the phrasing, the smug assurance that she had no other obligations. They never asked if she was free. They assumed. And because she had never broken the pattern, she would go. The Cartwright dining room was heavy with ritual that night. The chandelier burned brighter than necessary, casting halos across polished cutlery. A vase of white roses dominated the center of the table, their fragrance sharp, almost medicinal. Her father sat already in place at the head, glasses perched low on his nose as he paged through documents bound with gold clips. He didn't rise when Alyssa entered, merely flicked his gaze over the rim. "You're on time," he said. "That's something." Her mother fluttered to her with a quick air kiss, perfumed and brittle. "Darling, sit. You'll make us late for the soup." Her brother leaned back in his chair, one arm slung lazily over the backrest. A half-empty glass of Bordeaux balanced on the table near his hand. He smirked. "Anna the bookworm graces us with her presence. What's new in your thrilling world of shelving paper?" "Hello to you too," Alyssa said, taking her seat. The first course arrived. The staff moved silently, silver lids lifted in unison like choreography. Her family hardly glanced at them. Alyssa, as always, murmured thanks. So, her father began, laying his napkin across his lap with deliberate precision. I've been speaking with Carter and Associates about a new venture. Real estate development on the waterfront. It requires liquidity, yes, but the return's solid, reliable. Your brother will be taking point. Of course I will, her brother said, raising his glass. I've got the instinct for these things. Her mother smiled tightly, as though fearful the smile might slip. And it will be good for the family. For the Cartwright name. We need everyone to contribute. Alyssa kept her eyes on her soup. What does that mean? It means, her father said, that you've been coasting long enough. We've carried you. Carried me. The words slipped out before she could stop them, sharp as the edge of a broken plate. Yes, he said, voice cooling. We've allowed you the luxury of idleness, of chasing hobbies. But now it's time to be useful. Sign on with us. Invest. Be part of something larger than yourself. Her brother chuckled. Think of it this way, Alyssa. Even you can't mess up signing your name. The heat in her chest flared, but she swallowed it down. She had survived years of remarks like this, always biting her tongue until it bled. Yet tonight, something in the cadence of her father's voice, final, dismissive, landed harder than usual. What if I don't want to? She asked. The silence was immediate and heavy. Her mother blinked as though she hadn't understood. Her brother snorted. Her father set down his spoon with an audible clink. Don't be ridiculous, he said. This isn't about want. It's about duty. Family duty. Alyssa's hands tightened around her napkin. You talk about duty as if it's a chain. Maybe that's what it is for you. But for me, she stopped, pulse racing. For me, it's the words I write at 3 in the morning while you sleep. For me, it's the millions who see me even though you never have. But she said none of it. Not yet. Her brother leaned forward, grin wide. What exactly do you think you're doing with your life, Alyssa? You've got no job that matters, no prospects, no plan. Unless you're hiding a fortune in that shoebox apartment of yours. Enough, her mother snapped, startling them all. Her hand trembled as she adjusted the roses. This isn't the time. But the damage was done. The air quivered with fracture lines. Alyssa set her napkin on the table, neatly folded. If this is what you think of me, she said quietly, then perhaps this is the last dinner I'll attend. Her father's eyes narrowed. Don't dramatize. You'll sign the papers. You'll thank us later. She rose, chair scraping against the polished floor. Perhaps I won't. And before any of them could speak again, she turned and walked out, the chandelier's light shattering across her back like glass. She didn't remember the drive home, only the sensation of her hands gripping the steering wheel, as if it were the only anchor she had left. When she climbed the narrow stairs above the bakery, her apartment felt different, smaller but truer. She dropped her bag on the chair, sat at her desk and opened the laptop. The cursor blinked at her, patient, waiting. And Alyssa began to write. Chapter 5. The manuscript. The night after the dinner, sleep would not come. Alyssa lay in the narrow bed with her arms crossed over her chest, eyes fixed on the dark ceiling where the faint glow of the bakery's sign below painted trembling orange shapes. Each time she closed her eyes, the dinner replayed. The clink of her father's spoon against porcelain, her brother's sneer, her mother's roses filling the air with their medicinal sweetness. She sat up before dawn, pulling on her robe and moving to the desk as though drawn by gravity. The laptop waited, its surface cool under her fingertips. When it sprang to life, the screen's glow washed the room in a pale, holy light. The cursor blinked in the center of a blank document like a heartbeat. And she began. Words poured from her like blood from an open vein. She wrote a dinner table in a house too perfect, where silverware gleamed like weapons and roses suffocated the air. She wrote a patriarch whose voice flattened every dream into dust, a brother drunk on entitlement, a mother who loved but feared her own fragility. She wrote a daughter, silent but burning, who finally found her tongue. The sentences came jagged, urgent. They carried the rhythms of the dinner, the cruelty threaded through every word spoken at that polished table. But on the page, Alyssa gave her character what she herself had been denied. Not silence, not hesitation, but fury unchained. You never carried me, the character said. I carried you. Every roof you slept under, every bill that vanished, every mercy you mistook for luck, I was there. You never saw me. You only saw the ghost of who you wanted me to be. The keystrokes were loud in the small room, each one like a stone thrown at glass. She didn't pause to edit, didn't soften her voice. She wrote until her hands ached, until her throat hurt as if she had spoken the words aloud. When the first light of morning seeped through the curtains, Alyssa stopped. She leaned back, chest heaving as though she had run a race. The document stretched for pages, raw and jagged but alive. She closed her eyes and whispered into the stillness, "One has spoken." Later, with the city awake outside, Alyssa sent the file to Mara under a simple subject line, draft. She knew Mara would read it, would sense the sharp edge cutting beneath the prose. And Alyssa knew it was good, dangerously good. Afterward, she made tea, stood at the window, and watched the street below fill with schoolchildren clutching backpacks too big for their small frames. Their voices floated upward, bright against the morning air. The world kept moving, unaware of the fire she had poured into her pages overnight. She pressed the brass key at her throat and felt something new. Not just secrecy but power. A power her family could neither comprehend nor control. They thought she was drifting. They thought she was idle. But here above the bakery, Alyssa was building a storm. Chapter 6. The family conclave morning in the Cartwright house had its own liturgy. Espresso hissed. News tickers scrolled. Doors closed with the padded finality of money that had long ago learned to keep its voice down. In the breakfast room, the winter sun came in obliquely through the high windows, gilding the edges of everything and warming nothing. Her father read with his glasses low on his nose, the paper folded with courtroom precision. Beside the crystal bowl of clementines lay a stack of documents held by a gold clip, memoranda from Carter and Associates, a draft term sheet, printed emails from a banker who had the kind of first name that made old money comfortable. Her mother traced the rim of a demitasse with a fingertip, pearls bright against the charcoal silk of her blouse. A vase of white cyclamen held the center of the table, as if purity could be staged into being. Her brother strode in late, as usual, dressed with the loose confidence of someone who had yet to discover the difference between luck and skill. He took a clementine, tore it open with theatrical speed, and tossed the peel onto his plate like confetti. "Well," he asked, "what's the verdict on the waterfront?" Her father did not look up. "The underwriting is solid. Liquidity requirements are non-trivial." "Which is why we're a family," her brother said lightly, as if the word were a lever he could use to move money. "We pull in, we push out." "We do not push anything," her father said. "We structure. Precision is the difference between a venture and a mess." Her mother set down the demitasse. "We have a gala meeting at 11, she said into the space between the men. "I'm short a speaker. There's a rumor Alyssa Finch may do a message, though of course no one has ever seen her." Her father flicked a page. "Invisible people are convenient to the myth of genius," he said. "If they were forced to sit at a table and be known, one suspects the spell would break." "Some spells survive the light," her mother said softly, half to herself, the way one speaks to a painting on a wall. Her brother had already lost interest. "Liquidity," he repeated, mouthful of citrus. "We can solve that. We create an SPV, fold a few family assets in, take a line." Her father held up a hand. "Your verbs are cheap. Liquidity requires cash." "Then we ask Alyssa," her brother said, and smiled as if he had just offered the punchline to a long-standing family joke. "She's been floating on our good graces since the dawn of time. It's time she ponied up. Or at least signed against something. She can be a silent partner, our specialty." Their mother's jaw tensed by a degree. "She is not a balance sheet." "No," her father said, very calm. "She is a liability that could be turned into an asset with correct handling." The sentence fell into the room like a coin dropped into a well. Even the espresso machine in the butler's pantry took that moment to go silent. "Darling," their mother said, finding a thread of air. "Words matter. Results matter," he replied. He placed one sheet at the top of the stack. "In point of fact, we have an oddity. The mortgage on this house was satisfied last spring in an early payoff. Not by us. Bank shows the note cleared by an entity called Eastover Holdings LLC. Out of state. No owner disclosed. A sophisticated structure." Her brother blinked. "What does that even mean?" "It means," their father said, That someone paid off our house through a shell. We enjoy the benefit. We do not control the actor. Unknown actors create risk. Unknown actors also send thank you notes, their mother said dryly. Perhaps we simply received a miracle. We do not build families on miracles, her father said. We build them on paper. He slid a second document across the table. An email from the banker. A paragraph near the bottom was underlined in heavy pen. Batch filing suggests beneficial ownership is consolidated under at least 3 charitable instruments with high-grade counsel. This is not amateur hour. If you want a name, you won't get it. But whoever it is knows how to make a footprint disappear on a marble floor. Her brother whistled. So we've got a ghost with deep pockets. Maybe Mother's invisible author paid us off out of aesthetic principle. Their mother looked at the cyclamen as if consulting it. Don't be absurd. Absurdity has a way of aligning with reality, her father said. Whoever arranged this prefers anonymity. Good. We prefer control. Better. How do you propose to exert control over someone who does not wish to be seen? Their mother asked, eyes now clear, pearl bright. The old methods, he said. Proximity. Obligation. Paper. He tapped the gold clip. Carter and Associates wants signatures for the preliminary partnership. It is standard to include family members, even as nominal limited partners. Liability protections cascade. Tax advantages accrue. We can place Alyssa within the structure with minimal exposure. Once she is inside the circle, future actions are straightforward. You mean once she signs, you can require more signatures, their mother said. That is a crude way to put it, he said. But yes. Her brother grinned. And if she drifts or dithers, we hold distributions until she behaves. Language, their mother said sharply enough that both men looked at her. She pressed her napkin with her palm until the linen stiffened. She is our daughter. She is also an adult, her father said. Adults sign. He checked his watch, then his email. Another message had arrived, this time from a junior associate at a white shoe firm whose crispness tried to be a tone. He read it once, twice. The line at the end made his mouth flatten. Also, we were approached by a journalist researching silent philanthropy in the county. Anonymous payoffs of medical debts, small theaters saved by neighborhood resilience grants, etc. They are phishing. Recommend discretion and unremarkable answers should any inquiries surface. He thought of last spring's vanishing bill from the hospital, of the way it had slid off the books without the usual dance of phone calls and favors. He thought of the bakery owner who had been ready to sell, and then mysteriously decided to stay. Look at this, he said, passing the phone to their mother. She read, color changing almost imperceptibly. Someone is doing good things, she said, and wants no credit. Credit is how one measures leverage, her father said. An invisible creditor is worse than a visible enemy. He rose. We will present the papers tonight. She will sign. I will make it easy for her to do the right thing. What if she doesn't? Their mother asked, not as a dare, honestly, like someone who wanted the floor plan in case of fire. Then we proceed without her, he said. But first we give her the opportunity to choose sense. At 11, their mother sat in a conference room with cream walls and fresh hydrangea and refined women who ran 3 calendars at once. The gala committee debated lighting schemes and acoustics with the intensity of generals. A spreadsheet projected on the far wall ticked up as donations were pledged. Keynote, Sonia said, tapping a lacquered nail at a highlighted cell. Still unresolved. We have a lead, their mother said. A message from the Finch camp, perhaps, if the agent is to be believed. And if not, someone asked. Then we create our own gravity, she said lightly. We make the cause the star. Under the table, her fingers moved of their own accord, typing a note on her phone. Alyssa, Sunday dinner at 6. Bring yourself. She stared at the message once more before sending it, as if looking might change the flavor of the words. It did not. She sent it anyway. On the drive home, she replayed the last dinner in her mind and winced at a line here, a look there. A mother's inventory. She thought of the paragraph in Finch's novel about choosing one's audience. She did not believe in coincidence. She believed in collisions one mistook for fate. At a red light she opened her texts again. then closed them without writing anything further. Love, she had discovered, sometimes spoke in imperatives and hoped to be forgiven afterward. Her brother's afternoon unspooled out of an email tab into a glass office with vertical garden walls and a bar cart no one used before 5. The partner at Carter & Associates, Carter himself, was the kind of man who converted adjectives into coin. He used the word synergy without embarrassment and shook hands as if compressing steel into ingots. "We like families," Carter said, seating them. "We like legacy. We like clean paper. We especially like when those 3 things align." "Alignment is our brand," her brother said. "Charming in the way a practice pitcher is charming until the first ball misses the plate. We can move quickly." Carter smiled in a way that suggested speed was fine so long as the math kept up. "Your father is a known quantity," he said plainly. "You are an emerging one. We'll have you run point on the cultural outreach piece and the soft commitments." "I do hard commitments too," her brother said. "Do them softly," Carter said, not unkindly. "This is a sonata, not a march." Afterward, in the elevator, her brother sent 2 messages. One to a friend with access to a venue, asking for VIP tables, comped now, paid later. And one to his father, "Carter is on board. Need all family signatures this week, so we can lock rates before the window tightens." A bubble appeared then vanished on his screen. Tonight, his father wrote. Be on time. By late afternoon, the house was a set again. Florists had been replaced by the staff laying a table. The same choreography. The same polished instruments of ritual. In his study, her father spoke with the family lawyer, David Lennox, who had the professional gift of concise unease. "If your daughter signs as a nominal partner," Lennox said, "you acquire cohesion. If she does not, you acquire exposure." "I do not acquire anything," her father said. "I manage. Give me the phrase that prevents regret." "Standard indemnification," Lennox said. "And a line here." He bent and wrote in his tiny angular hand on a draft. "This will allow you to act on behalf of any limited partner who is unable or unwilling to respond in a timely fashion." "You mean a power of attorney. An instrument to allow the entity to function," Lennox said, as if language were a room he could rearrange to make the furniture look like different furniture. "She will object to the word power," her father said. "So we won't use it." Lennox capped his pen. "Best case, she doesn't read it." "She will read it," he said. "She will sign anyway." "Why?" Lennox asked, genuinely curious, like a man examining the bridge he is asked to test. "Because family is gravity," her father said. "One can resist it only so long before one orbits." Lennox, who had observed bodies break out of orbits and never return, did not argue. "If anyone asks about mortgage satisfaction, you heard nothing and enjoyed everything," he said briskly. "We do not chase gifts. We accept them. We do not name givers. We think in abstraction and go on." Her father nodded once, the nod of a man who intended to turn even abstractions into something he could own. At 5:45, her mother stood in the foyer and looked at her reflection in the hall mirror. She adjusted one strand of hair, then left it imperfect, a small rebellion against gleam. She walked to the dining room, stopped by the cyclamen, and turned one leaf that had folded inward. The plant looked better for the interference and resentful of it at once. "She'll come," her brother said, breezing through with the confidence of a gambler whose luck had not yet taught him manners. "She may not," their mother said. "She will," their father said from the doorway, tie straight, expression set to neutral the way one sets a thermostat. "How can you be sure?" their mother asked. "Because she always does," he said, and gave the single word the weight of an equation. They waited. The chandelier hummed with light. The house held its breath like a person preparing to be looked at. The clock in the hall marked 6 with a calm that felt like judgment. Her mother's phone buzzed. She looked down. A message from Alyssa. "One will be late." Her mother closed her eyes, brief relief and brighter dread sharing a single heartbeat. She texted back. "Dinner will keep. Drive carefully." Her father's jaw tensed, her brother smirked. The cyclamen pretended to have no opinion. "Have the documents ready," her father told the staff as if they were paralegals. "We'll eat after the business." "Business," their mother repeated gently, and set one more place on the far side of the table with her own hands, an old superstition against absence. In the study, the papers waited where the lamp made them glow. Sentences like rails laid over a landscape. A signature there, an initial here, and the train could run whether the passenger wanted the ride or not. Upstairs, a window cracked open to winter. The house breathed in cold that smelled like the river. Somewhere across the city above a bakery, a brass key lay quiet on a desk. In 1 hour, it would be warm again, held by a hand that had learned to build without permission. For now, the Cartwrights did what families do before the fracture becomes a story. They waited at a table set for certainty, and mistook ritual for safety. Chapter 7. Late arrival. The bakery downstairs had just pulled its last tray from the oven when Alyssa closed her laptop. The manuscript sat saved in 3 places, humming in her mind like a storm cloud that refused to dissipate. Her phone glowed with the earlier text from her mother. Dinner will keep. Drive carefully. She considered not going. Considered turning off the phone, brewing tea, and letting the Cartwrights wait in their chandeliered dining room until impatience curdled into silence. But habit, that old and merciless tether, guided her steps. She dressed simply, dark dress, clean lines, a coat that could disappear into any crowd. She slipped the brass key into her pocket, not because she needed it, but because its weight reminded her who she was. When she entered the house, the scent of roses hit her first, thicker than last time, almost cloying. A butler ushered her in with the faintest look of relief, as if her presence had saved him from a night of explanations. Her mother met her in the foyer, pearls at her throat, worry etched at the corners of her eyes. "Darling," she said with a quick kiss to Alyssa's cheek. "You made it." Her father appeared in the doorway to the dining room, expression neutral, documents under one arm. "You're late," he said. Her brother lounged at the table with a glass of wine already half empty. "But not too late to save the day, bookworm?" He grinned as though he had just coined a clever line. Alyssa removed her coat slowly, deliberately. "I said I'd be late. I am." They took their places. The chandelier blazed overhead, scattering light across silver and crystal. The table was set not for comfort but for spectacle, every plate and utensil in perfect symmetry. Before the first course arrived, her father placed the documents at her end of the table. The gold clip gleamed under the light. "We'll keep this brief," he said. "Sign here, here, and initial there. You'll be listed as a limited partner. No liability, no risk. A simple matter of family alignment." Alyssa did not touch the papers. "And if I don't sign?" Her brother laughed. "You will. You've never said no in your life." Her mother shot him a look, but she didn't correct him. Instead, she said softly, "Darling, it's only a formality. It binds us together. That's all." Alyssa laid her hands flat on the table, palms down. "Family is not a formality." Her father's jaw tightened. "Don't be dramatic. This is structure. Legacy. You've coasted long enough. It's time to contribute." The air in the room thickened. The roses on the table seemed to tilt toward her, heavy with fragrance, as if waiting for her answer. Alyssa met her father's eyes. "You say I've coasted. That I've been carried. Do you know who paid off this house last spring?" His gaze sharpened. "What are you implying?" She leaned forward, voice calm, deliberate. "I know because it was me." The words dropped into the silence like stones into water. Her brother barked a laugh, incredulous. "You? Paid off this house? With what? Store credit from the bookstore?" Her mother's hand trembled as she set down her glass. "Alyssa." Her father's voice cut through the air. "Explain yourself." Alyssa reached into her pocket and placed the brass key on the table. It caught the chandelier's light, glinting like a truth long buried. "One has explained enough for tonight," she said. "And one will not sign." The silence that followed was absolute. She stood, collected her coat, and walked toward the door. Her brother sputtered, her mother called her name, but Alyssa didn't turn back. The papers remained unsigned, the roses heavy with their perfume, the chandelier blazing over an emptiness they could no longer deny. Outside, the winter air struck her face clean and sharp. She breathed it in like freedom. Above the bakery, her desk would be waiting, and tomorrow she would write. Chapter 8. Aftershock silence held the Cartwright dining room for a long count after the door closed. The roses seemed to lean farther into their vase, overripe with their own perfume. The chandelier hummed faintly, the sound one notices only when everything else has stopped. Her brother recovered first, the way a man who fears quiet fills it. "She's bluffing," he said, pushing his chair back with an impatient scrape. "A bookstore clerk doesn't pay off a mortgage like this. She brought a trinket and a tone. Both can be returned." Her mother touched the rim of her glass as if testing for a crack. "She looked finished," she said. "Not angry. Finished." Her father gathered the papers into a tidy stack, aligning corners with the concentration of a surgeon. "Completion is an illusion," he said. "There is a step, there is a counterstep. Sit down." Her brother sat, sulking, but his foot jiggled under the table, telegraphing a rhythm only he could hear. "We will not invite theatrics into this room," her father continued. "We will develop facts. David Lennox will come. We will verify the claim about the mortgage and identify the entity. We will determine if our daughter understands what she has implied." She said. "One will not sign," her brother said, mimicking the cadence with a sneer. "What is that even supposed to mean?" "It means she has been practicing a language in which refusal sounds like virtue," her father replied. "Languages can be unlearned." The butler shifted in the doorway, uncertain whether to clear plates or wait for an ending no one could see. Her mother nodded once. "Take the roses away," she said. "They are too much tonight." He obeyed. The room breathed easier without the whiteheads crowding the air. They ate quickly and without appetite when the food finally arrived, a tableau of tradition going through its cues. At 9 Lennox appeared, summoned as if by the bell one keeps for old catastrophes. He carried a thin briefcase and the look of a man who had been dressed for dinner and had decided, at the last second, to be dressed for battle instead. "What happened?" he asked, once the door closed and the study's lamp turned their faces into careful ovals. "She refused to sign," her father said. "She announced she cleared the mortgage last spring." Lennox set the briefcase on the desk and opened it with a click that sounded too loud in the paneled room. "The note was satisfied by Eastover Holdings," he said, as if reading the case file aloud. "Out of state. We chased the chain until it turned into fog. The fog was well lit and professionally installed." "Could she have done it?" her mother asked. The question came out as both hope and fear. "On paper, no," Lennox said. "By perception, also no. Which means either it was not her, or she is more than one believed." Her brother snorted. "More than one believed? She has 3 outfits and a library card." "Appearances are what people who lack discretion mistake for proof," Lennox said without heat. "Let us not repeat their error." Her father leaned in. "What can be done?" 2 tracks, Lennox said. "Soft and hard." Soft. Be a family, mend the quarrel, create proximity. Information flows toward warmth. Hard. Engage a discreet investigator for corporate registries and trust administration. Not to harass. To know. "Do both," her father said. Her mother glanced at him. "And in the meantime?" "In the meantime," Lennox replied, "do not force signatures. The fastest way to cement a refusal is to make it costless to maintain. Offer, withdraw. Invite, do not demand. Let her believe there is no leverage to be won by saying no." Her brother made a face, as if the room had filled with the smell of boiled vegetables. "That's it? We just wait?" "Waiting is not absence of action," Lennox said. "It is pressure applied in ways that do not look like hands." Her mother stood, restless suddenly, and crossed to the window that overlooked the dark lawn. A single taxi moved along the distant road, light sliding on glass. "She put a key on the table," she said. "A brass key. As if to say there is a door and she controls it." "Symbolism," her brother muttered. "Symbols are contracts," her father said. "They bind even the people who mock them." Lennox closed the briefcase with that same too loud click. "I will start tonight. One more thing. If the past months include philanthropic events that coincided in fortune, the hospital bill, the theater, perhaps even the bakery, assume the same hand. If she has built a channel, she has used it more than once." "The bakery," her mother repeated. "He nearly sold. Then stayed. Said a grant appeared." He brought a box of danishes to the house the next day and cried while describing flaky pastry. A small, sad smile tugged at her mouth. It was touching and ridiculous. Her father's eyes flicked. We do not accept narrative as evidence, but we take note of where narratives align. Lennox bowed his head in an old-fashioned way that made the room feel briefly like a church and took his leave. When he had gone, the three of them remained in the study as if a verdict were due and the jury had stepped out. Her mother spoke first. One could apologize, she said, making the suggestion sound like an offering on an altar no one believed in. Invite her to lunch. No papers, no speeches. Ask about her bookshop. Listen. Her brother rolled his eyes. To what? A list of returns? Today one stacked literary fiction until the bell rang. Her father looked at the door through which Lennox had vanished. One apologizes when one has erred, he said. One has not erred. One has attempted to include. She has chosen exclusion. She will discover that exclusion is expensive. Her mother flinched, barely, but enough to betray that the word expensive had landed in a place money did not touch. She straightened. One will not turn this house into a court, she said quietly. Not again. Her father's gaze softened by a degree. Then host, he said. Bring her back into rooms where warmth is possible. Warmth, her brother said, under his breath, like a man tasting a word that refused to be whiskey. News traveled through wealthy circles the way perfume does. Atomized, inhaled, misremembered. By morning, 3 different versions of the dinner existed in the heads of people who had not been there. In one, Alyssa had thrown a glass. In another, she had produced a checkbook and offered a sum so obscene that her father had wept. In the best one, she had lifted her hand and the chandelier had gone out, as if electricity had become a moral collaborator. The Cartwrights ate breakfast in near silence, each inhabiting a different rumor. Her mother read the paper without seeing it. Her brother scrolled. Her father wrote an email to Carter and Associates. Family signatures pending. No delay to execution. Will confirm timeline after weekend. Carter wrote back with a sentence that was both blessing and ultimatum. We like families that act as one. 10. The banker called. We have no additional information on Eastover, he said. But we do have a pattern. 3 trusts that show up as donors in places where municipalities wipe small debts or issue microgrants to small businesses. The names repeat just enough to suggest a mind behind them. Names, her father said. Common Room Foundation. Thicket. Eastover, the banker said. Charming. Vague. Her father thanked him and ended the call. Charming and vague. That was how people described danger when it wore a smile. He walked the length of the hall where portraits watched from frames heavy enough to require a 2-man lift. He stopped before one he had always liked, a Cartwright from a century ago with a posture like a pronouncement. The painter had captured a quirk in the mouth that people used to interpret as humor. He had always read it as certainty. What do you think? He asked the long-gone man, half mocking his own impulse. Is this discipline or rebellion? The painted mouth did not move. The certainty held. Her mother texted Alyssa at noon. Lunch any day this week? No business. Just us. She added a heart, then deleted it, then added a period and deleted the period, then sent the original words bare, hoping bareness would read as respect and not neglect. No response came, which was also a response. She drove to the conservatory that afternoon to confirm floral orders for a gala rehearsal and, on impulse, slipped into the small recital hall with 15 chairs. A student was practicing a piece that began as an apology and ended as a question, hands uncertain and brave. The room smelled like old wood and the ghost of rosin. She sat in the second row and let the music remind her of the time one had gone to a school concert and cried because the children played notes as if they were building a bridge, confident someone would walk across. When the student finished, he noticed her and flushed. Sorry, he said. Wrong place, wrong time. No, she said. Right place. Right time. He packed his case, buoyed by the sentence as if he had been handed a better instrument. Her mother watched him go and thought, surprised by the thought, that perhaps apologies could be music if one remembered to write the melody small and play it in a room with only 15 chairs. Her brother went to his office and performed competence. He took calls, made promises, looked out the window with grave attention while thinking about dinner and revenge. He sent a message to a friend who knew a person who knew a person. Find Eastover Holdings. The good version, not the Google version. The friend texted a dollar sign and a winking face, and beneath, discretion costs extra. Send the invoice. Her brother wrote, as if invoices were nets one cast into rivers that always produced fish. In the early afternoon he received a link from a blog that fancied itself investigative. The quiet money behind loud cities. He skimmed it, jaw tightening as the author speculated about ghost donors, whose gifts rearranged neighborhoods without visible fingerprints. His sister's neighborhood was featured in 2 paragraphs, anonymized into a parable. The bakery appeared as a resilient node, the theater as an artistic cardiac muscle. He forwarded it to his father with a single word, related? His father replied with nothing. Sometimes silence is less absence than restraint. By 5 the house, ordered, polished, ready to be itself on command, felt like a stage that had been cleared after the matinee. Her mother stood by the kitchen door and watched the staff prepare a quiet dinner for 3. No florid flowers this time, just a small bowl of green apples, their skins the color of obedience. Set a 4th place, she said suddenly. The chef and the butler looked at one another, both pros at concealing astonishment. Of course, the butler said, and laid an extra plate as gently as if it were a bird in need of rest. Her father came in, dropped a hand to the back of a chair, and regarded the 4 settings. You are optimistic, he said. Hopeful, she replied. Optimism is for people who think they are owed it. He almost smiled. Fair. At 6 the door did not open. At 6:15 it also did not open. At 6:30 her mother texted again. No papers, no speeches. Just soup. The message did not deliver. No red receipt, no dots, just the quiet of a signal that had chosen not to be a bridge. Her brother made a show of stabbing a piece of fish and did it badly. Flakes breaking like a thing that had tried to hold together and failed. She wants to hurt us, he said. She wants not to be hurt by us, her mother said. Her father set his fork down. She wants to be superior, he said, and then immediately looked as if he wished the sentence back. She wants a different ratio of power, he amended. Everyone does, her mother said. Even the people who pretend they do not think in those terms. They ate. The 4th place cooled. At 8 the staff cleared it away. A small ceremony of surrender. Near midnight Lennox called. Preliminary, he said. Common Room Foundation has a counsel named Henley on 3 filings. Eastover's registered agent is a shell used by 3 other shells we know. Thicket sits in a cluster surrounded by literary foundations. Any one of them could be a decoy. Or all. I cannot give you a name without breaking laws you pay me not to break. You can infer, her father said. I can infer that whoever sits at the center of this web prefers invisibility and pays well to maintain it, Lennox said. And this will not please you, the pattern of giving suggests intent that is not random charity. There is a philosophy at work. Philosophy, her brother scoffed. As if money were a school. Money is always a school, Lennox said. Most of us are poor students. He paused. One more thing. The theater you enjoy small sign language performances? A wire arrived at 10 a.m. today. Enough to clear arrears and pay rents for 2 months. The email from the granting foundation was beautifully written. Formal, spare, precise to the comma. Her mother's breath caught, so softly even she might have missed it. Precise to the comma, she repeated, like a person testing a note on a new instrument. Her father stared at the study rug. The silk pattern he had walked across for years without ever naming. Very well, he said. We proceed as we began. No coercion. No signatures tonight. We invite. We do not demand. And if inviting fails? Lennox asked, not to be difficult, honestly, as a man planning the map for a country with poor roads. Then we adapt, her father said. Families do. Or they split into tribes and pretend history has ennobled the fracture. When the call ended, the house returned to its practiced quiet. In the front hall, the mirror held 3 faces and did not comment on any of them. Her mother went upstairs with a book and, for the first time in years, did not read. She turned the pages anyway so the sound would keep the thought from growing too large, that perhaps the door her daughter's brass key opened did not lead back to this house, and that loving someone who prefers exile requires learning to send provisions across a border one cannot cross. Her brother stayed up late at his desk, refreshing a screen that never gave him what he wanted. Proof that the world was still legible in the ways he preferred. Her father remained in the study under the lamplight, eyes open to a ceiling he had never apologized to. He imagined the signature line on the paper, a small blank that assumed acquiescence. He imagined a hand refusing to move. He realized, with the clean unkindness of clarity, that the habit of being obeyed had made him less skillful at being persuasive. He closed his eyes and saw, absurdly, a brass key on a white cloth, catching light like an answer to a question he had not asked in time. Across the city, above the bakery, the key lay where Alyssa had left it, warm again from being held. The day's wires were sent, the document was saved, the page was closed. In the margin of her notebook she had written, without knowing why, a sentence that would become a chapter title: The Cost of Being Seen by the Wrong Audience. The family slept, or attempted to, each in a different room of the same house. The night did what it always does, kept its own counsel and waited for morning to test everyone's resolve. Chapter 9. Pages in the dark. The night after the confrontation stretched long and thin, like a hallway with no doors. Alyssa sat at her desk, tea cooling at her elbow, the glow of her laptop the only light in the room. The words she had poured out in the days before were still there, waiting for her, daring her to continue. She opened the file and read the last line she'd written. The cost of being seen by the wrong audience is greater than the loneliness of not being seen at all. Her fingers hovered above the keys. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled down the street, brakes sighing, then silence. She typed. Some families feed you with expectation until you starve for air. Others starve you with silence until you become your own feast. The words came easier than breath. They weren't polished yet, but they pulsed with something undeniable. When dawn came, Alyssa saved the file in 3 places, as always: cloud, encrypted drive, and the brass key's hidden partition. Then she stood and stretched, muscles stiff from hours of stillness. The bakery below stirred to life, ovens thudding, scent of rising dough slipping into her apartment like a promise that the world would continue whether she liked it or not. She dressed, wrapped herself in a coat, and walked the few blocks to the bookstore. The air was sharp, her breath small clouds. Rowan was already inside, stacking new arrivals. He looked up when she entered. "You're early," he said. "I couldn't sleep," she answered. "Bad dreams. Bad dinners." He gave a wry smile, as if he understood more than he should. "Families," he said. "We all have them." She busied herself with unpacking boxes, grateful for the distraction. Customers trickled in, students, retirees, a young mother with a child who wandered straight to the picture books. Alyssa found comfort in the rhythm, the scanning of barcodes, the sliding of receipts, the small talk about weather and recommendations. Here she was Anna, the quiet clerk. Safe, but even here her other life pressed close. Near the register a woman held up a glossy hardcover, The Threshold Rooms, and sighed. "I stayed up until 3 finishing this," she told Rowan. "It was like the author reached into my ribcage and rearranged the bones." Rowan grinned. "That's Finch for you." Alyssa kept her gaze lowered, but warmth bloomed under her skin. "That's me," she wanted to whisper. "That's my hand in your ribcage, careful and cruel and true." But she said nothing. At midday, she slipped away to the small cafe on the corner. It was nearly empty, only a man with a newspaper and a couple whispering in the back. Alyssa chose a table by the window, ordered soup, and opened her notebook. She sketched the outlines of her next book. Not plot yet, but bones. A family who mistakes ritual for love. A daughter who builds a kingdom in silence. A key placed on a table, heavy with meaning. Her pen moved quickly, faster than her doubt. The waitress brought her soup and bread, and Alyssa ate without tasting, eyes never leaving the page. That night Mara called. "I read your draft," she said. "It's raw. Scalding. Unmistakable." Alyssa said nothing. "You know what this means," Mara continued. "This isn't just another book. This is revelation, even if no one knows it's you. Readers will feel the fire in it. Could break records." Alyssa finally spoke. "Or it could break me." Mara's voice softened. "You've already broken. The writing is how you rebuild." The line buzzed with silence after that. Alyssa stared at the brass key, lying on the desk like a witness. In the Cartwright house, the family gathered again in the study. Papers lay untouched. Tension lay heavier. Her father reread Lennox's memo about Eastover Holdings. Her brother paced, muttering about leverage. Her mother sat by the window, turning her pearls between her fingers like rosary beads. "She's hiding something," her brother said. "And I'll find it." Her father's voice was firm, measured. "Do not hunt. Invite." Her mother whispered, almost too low to hear. "What if she never comes back?" No one answered. Above the bakery, Alyssa opened her manuscript again. She typed until the lines blurred, until the clock slipped past midnight. She wrote a family who demanded signatures as if signatures could bind love. She wrote a woman who refused. She wrote herself, though no one would know. And when she finally slept, her dreams were not of dinner tables and roses. They were of doorways, endless doorways, each one waiting for her key. Chapter 10. The net-cast morning arranged the Cartwright house into its familiar squares of light and shadow. The breakfast room filled with the quiet efficiencies of wealth, cups replaced before they were empty, a newspaper ironed flat into obedient columns. Her father set 3 tasks upon the table along with the demitasse. "Be warm, be watchful, be wise. David will run the papers," he said. Meaning Lennox would continue tracing shells that turned into fog. "We will not force signatures. We will ask questions that sound like conversation." Her brother rolled an orange in his palm as if testing it for secrets. "And if conversation refuses to be interesting? Then one listens better," their mother said, surprising both men with the crispness of the rebuke. He inclined his head, half apology, half permission to proceed. "Begin with proximity," he said. "Information flows toward warmth." "Warmth," her brother repeated, as if the word were a tool he might teach himself to hold. By 9, Lennox had set a quiet machine in motion. Not the loud engines of subpoenas, these would come later if at all, but the finer gears of private registries and professional courtesies. A woman named Harriet Vale, who specialized in reading the negative space of corporate filings, sat in a small office downtown with a pot of tea cooling beside a stack of indexes. She did not look for names, she looked for habits. Eastover Holdings paid registered agent fees in the first week of every January with an overage by exactly $12. Thicket filed grant letters on the 9th of each month at 10 a.m. to the minute. Common Room's board met quarterly and recorded minutes with a punctuation fidelity that would shame most lawyers. Habits tell on people long after signatures disguise them. To Lennox he sent, "Patterns align. Counsel on several filings is a Henley. Expect your counterpart if you push. Nothing illegal. Everything deliberate." Lennox forwarded the note to her father with a single sentence. "There is a mind at the center." Her father read it twice and did not reply. Her brother pursued a different tactic. The personal errand dressed as coincidence. Just after lunch he walked into the bookstore as if wandering. He carried a copy of The Threshold Rooms in one hand, spine uncracked, jacket still greasing the light. Rowan looked up from a ladder and offered the unflappable cheer of retail. "Anything I can help you find?" "I'm looking for the person who did the window," her brother said, tipping his chin toward the paper silhouettes of doors and thresholds. "It's efficient." "That would be Anna," Rowan said. "She's in back sorting returns." "Anna," her brother repeated, smoothing the syllables as if they were a napkin. "Is she the manager?" "No," Rowan said, pleasantly blank. "She helps with displays." Her brother smiled the way one smiles at waiters one will never see again. "Tell Anna the window is very good at making people think they are choosing. That's a rare skill." Rowan's brows flicked, just once irritation disguised as interest. "I'll pass it along." "Also," her brother said, placing the pristine Finch on the counter, "I need to return this. Unread." "Not our policy," Rowan said, still pleasant. "We can exchange if it's within 30 days and the book is." "It's within 30 minutes, her brother said, tapping his watch. "Consider it a donation to your inventory then. Or a lesson in sunk cost." Before Rowan could reply, Alyssa came through the swinging door with a carton of new arrivals braced on her hip. She set it on the table with neat care and lifted the lid. For a fraction of a breath her brother felt the same shock one feels recognizing someone in a crowd one has not permitted to grow older. And then it was gone, replaced by his usual performance. "Anna," Rowan said evenly, This is a customer with an interesting theory of retail. Alyssa, Anna here, looked at the book on the counter and then at her brother without surprise. We're glad to have you, she said, the words so neutral they created their own weather. He picked up the Threshold Rooms again, held it in one hand like a specimen. Everyone insists this author is unknowable, he said. Do you ever wish people were more knowable than their jackets? Sometimes jackets tell the truth, she said. Sometimes they are the only truth a person can afford. Her brother laughed, delighted at the aphorism even as he failed to understand it. Do you know the line about choosing one's audience? He asked. My mother wept over it. She thinks tears confer accuracy. Alyssa looked past him to the window, where paper doors hung ajar. Some audiences choose themselves, she said. One writes and the room fills with the right people. Rowan, faintly amused, slid the Finch aside and began ringing up a stack of paperbacks for a waiting customer. Her brother watched the precision of Alyssa's hands as she straightened a display of slim poetry spines. He looked for telltale signs of money, watches, shoes, and found only an economy so exact it could be mistaken for poverty. Do you do author events? He asked casual. Readings? Signings? Occasionally, Rowan said. Some writers prefer to let the books speak. How quaint, her brother said, and dropped a business card on the counter with a small metallic clink. If you ever want to make the room larger, call. After he left, Rowan flipped the card into the drawer with the rubber bands and the extra pens, as if declining to let the world rub its thumbprint on the store. Alyssa kept her face composed, but when she carried the empty carton back to recycling, she pressed her palm briefly to the brass key beneath her blouse, the motion so small it might have been a scratch. Outside, her brother paused on the sidewalk and turned back to look at the window. The cut paper doors lifted lazily in the forced air of a vent. He felt, absurdly, as if he were being measured by a geometry he had not studied. He texted his father. Anna equals bookstore. Nothing else on the surface. I'll keep circling. His father replied, do not circle. Converse. Circles are for men who fear straight lines. Her mother chose the theater. It was Tuesday, the chalkboard out front lettered with a new hand that made the words look unsteady but brave. Inside, the house manager wore hope like a shawl. You're early, she said. You must be a friend. Of the concept, her mother said. Silence is fashionable at my age. The house manager laughed, then grew serious. We were lucky this week, she said, voice lowering. A grant landed from a foundation common room, just in time. Kept us from calling the landlord to negotiate again. The letter was kind, precise. You know, the sort of kindness that doesn't make you feel small? Her mother did. She did too well. May one see the letter? She asked, with the air of a person asking for a recipe she will never cook but wants to understand. The woman brought it from the office, printed on heavy paper, the font unshowy, the language exact to the comma. We are pleased to support the continuation of work that expands the vocabulary of listening, it read, and beneath, disbursement at 10 a.m. Thursday, with our thanks for your attention to the small and the unnoisy. Signed for the Board Common Room Foundation. Her mother traced the words with her eyes and felt a tug that started in memory and ended in a suspicion she didn't want to name. Precise to the comma. A word unnoisy that translated restraint into praise. There were sentences like this in books that lived face down on her nightstand, their spines cracked softly by grief and recognition. Your donor, she said, careful. Do you know who they are? Anonymous, the woman said. Perhaps that is why the letter is so large. Her mother handed it back. I hope you make the room you need, she said, surprising herself by hearing the line come out as blessing. On the way out she stopped by the conservatory. 15 chairs. A program tucked into the door handle as if to keep time from shutting itself away. She sat alone in the second row until a student wandered in and rehearsed a piece that offered apology without asking for it. When it ended, the student looked at her for approval. Her mother pressed her fingers together as if catching a thought before it escaped. Right place, she said. Right time. The student smiled in the way people do when a stranger confirms their existence. As she left, her mother glanced at the back row and imagined a coat folded carefully over one chair, saving a place for a person who needed to choose a rival. By afternoon the banker had delivered a map, Dots overlaid on a city like constellations one could translate into stories. Hospital debts vanished here. Microgrants appeared there. A bakery replaced a heating coil in February and paid cash. The dots were not many, but they were rhythmic. Thursdays at 10. Ninths of the month. January with its tidy overage. Her father stood over the map with Lennox, who had brought it in a tube as if it were art. These are proofs of pattern, Lennox said. Not proofs of person. They are proofs of will, her father said. Whoever directs this prefers precision to applause. Lennox almost smiled. You say that as if it were a flaw. It is a difficulty, he corrected. Flaws can be fixed. Difficulties must be worked with. He made 3 calls. The first to the hospital. He asked to speak not to the donor relations officer, too public, but to the accountant whose name always appeared second on the letterhead and therefore did the work. She remembered a wire that cleared a cluster of small balances in a single afternoon, the ledger blinking zeros like a slot machine that had finally been rigged toward mercy. The second to the bakery owner. He refused to say anything except thank you in an accent that made gratitude sound like resistance. The third to Carter and Associates. He told them family signatures would take longer, and they told him quietly that markets did not wait for sons to be persuasive. He hung up, looked at the map again, and thought, for the first time not as a strategist but as a father, of a child who had once hidden behind an upholstered chair with a book, emerging for dinner with a face rearranged by whatever she had met on the page. It was not fear that came exactly. It was the knowledge that one had mistaken quiet for absence and now found the room full. At dusk his wife returned from the world with silence in her hair. She found him in the study and set the theater letter on his desk without preface. Read that, she said. He did. He read it again. A single line snagged. Attention to the small and the unnoisy. It turned in his mind like a key in a lock one had not noticed before. She writes like that, his wife said, voice pared down to its wire. Our daughter. When she emails. When she leaves notes. She has a way of arranging care so it doesn't humiliate the receiver. He looked up sharply. You think? I think I don't know what I think, she said. I think the word unnoisy is either pretension or intimacy, and I choose to believe in intimacy. He held the page at arm's length as if distance could force clarity. We cannot become people who see our child in every kindness the city receives. Or we can become people who finally see our child, she said, and left him with the sentence like a match burning down between his fingers. That night her brother met a man at a bar, who knew a man who lived in the same building as a woman who processed municipal filings. The man with the beer put down his glass and said, You want a name? You won't get one. But you might catch a seam if you pull at the right stitch. What stitch? Her brother asked, impatient. Language, the man said. People hide money better than they hide sentences. Her brother stared at his phone until the words blurred, hearing advice that sounded like the opposite of finance. On impulse he typed unnoisy into a search and found nothing but echoes of the same letter where it had been quoted by grateful recipients. He closed the app, annoyed at advice that refused to turn into leverage. Near midnight Lennox called with an update he clearly did not want to give. We pushed Henley, he said. Softly. He pushed back politely. He knows it is us. He will not say who it is. He says his client will not tolerate harassment. We are not harassing, her father said. We are inquiring. Lawyering makes no ethical distinction, Lennox said. It sees risk and either increases it or decreases it. He suggested we decrease it. Her father's mind reassembled the day like a set of dominoes that refused to fall in the correct direction. The map. The letter. The bookstore. The word no one uses unless one needs to. The brass key on white linen. Catching light like a calculus one is not yet prepared to solve. We invite, he said into the quiet of the study, reiterating a strategy to convince himself it was still a strategy. We do not demand. He wrote to Alyssa the next morning. No attachments, no agenda, just a line lunch. No business. One would like to listen properly. He stared at it, deleted properly, then put it back. The adverb felt like an oath. She did not reply that day. Or the next. Her brother sent a second card to the bookstore with a handwritten note on the back. Rooms get larger when people stop whispering. Rowan taped it above the staff kettle with a doodle of a person shouting into a paper bag. Her mother went to the conservatory again and sat in the second row, while another student played a piece that sounded like two people learning how to apologize without losing themselves. When it ended, she wrote a check to the Student Scholarship Fund and signed it with a hand that had learned slowly to be generous without feeling robbed. In the evenings, they reconvened in rooms that smelled less like roses and more like ordinary air. The documents waited in the study, all the corners aligned, sentences ready to funnel a life into channels they considered responsible. No one picked up a pen. The house was patient as houses are. It knew families confused time with progress and silence with consent. It held its rooms open like a set of unanswered questions. Across the city, above the bakery, the brass key warmed in a palm and cooled on a desk, kept the hour of wires and paragraphs, and refused to learn obedience. A net had been cast, not to catch but to understand the shape of the water. Whether it would tighten or be pulled back empty would depend on whether the hands holding it remembered what nets do when they are used to gather instead of to wound. For now, the Cartwrights practiced proximity like a second language one learns late in life, haltingly with the wrong emphases, but with a sincerity that meant the mouth would eventually adjust, and perhaps the ear as well. Chapter 11. Echoes in the walls. The Cartwright house had always been proud of its silence. Sound was measured here. Doors closed softly, shoes padded across carpets, even arguments were delivered in the crisp tones of debate rather than the vulgarity of shouting. But now silence carried a different weight. It was not composure, it was echo. Every room seemed to hum faintly with the memory of Alyssa's refusal. At breakfast, the three of them pretended to read. Her father sat behind the Financial Times. Her brother scrolled his phone with exaggerated flicks of the thumb. Her mother stirred her coffee until the spoon tapped the porcelain like a metronome. No one spoke until her father lowered the paper. "Lennox has confirmed that Henley is counsel for the trusts," he said. "Henley does not make mistakes. Whoever pays him well." Her brother smirked. "So we're dealing with a pro. That doesn't sound like Alyssa. She used to cry filling out tax forms." "She used to be young," her mother said sharply. "She is not anymore." Her father ignored the interruption. "We must assume she has resources. Real ones. Enough to make her believe she can walk away." "Walk away from what?" her brother asked, incredulous. "From us? She can't. She's a Cartwright. That's blood. That's permanent." Her mother set down her spoon. "Blood is not the chain you think it is. People can sever it. They do every day." The words startled even her. She had spoken them with a softness that did not dull their truth. Later that morning, her father received a call from Carter and Associates. Carter's voice was smooth as always, but beneath it was steel. "Your timeline?" Carter asked. "We need clarity. Markets do not pause for family dynamics." "We are consolidating," her father said. "Minor delay." "Minor delays become major doubts," Carter replied. "We like families that act as one. Resolve your signature issue, or we will find others who already have." The line went dead. Her father sat for a long time, staring at the phone as if it had betrayed him. Her brother, restless, returned to the blog about ghost donors. He read it again, slower this time. The sentences about common room and thicket itched at him. Then he searched for a Lara Finch interview anonymity. Dozens of articles bloomed across the screen, all saying the same thing. The author never appeared, never spoke, never gave more than a paragraph through her agent. Reclusive, private, elusive. His eyes narrowed. Anonymous money. Anonymous writer. Could it? He laughed out loud at his own absurdity. Alyssa the Finch? The thought was laughable. She was too timid, too inward. And yet, he remembered the brass key, the calm refusal, the certainty in her tone. He bookmarked the articles. He did not tell his parents. Not yet. Her mother chose her own investigation. She went upstairs to Alyssa's old room, which had been kept as if its occupant might return at any moment. The shelves were still lined with books, some spines cracked, others pristine. She ran a finger along them and paused at a volume of poetry, worn, margins filled with tiny notes in Alyssa's hand. The notes were precise, economical, but also startlingly sharp. The line bends too easily here. This stanza hides more than it shows. Silence is its own kind of verb. Her mother closed the book and pressed it to her chest. It was Alyssa's voice, stronger than she had remembered, fiercer than she had allowed herself to hear. She sat on the bed and whispered into the empty room. Why didn't we listen? No answer came, only the faint ticking of the house's old clock in the hall. That night, the three of them convened in the study again. The document still waited on the desk, gold clip gleaming. Her father spoke first. She believes she can stand apart. We must show her she cannot. Her mother shook her head. No, we must show her she doesn't have to. Her brother leaned back in his chair, smirk faint but uneasy. Or we find out what she's hiding and use it. The chandelier above hummed faintly, catching the tension in the air. For the first time, the Cartwrights were no longer aligned. They were not one family, but three individuals staring at the same absence and interpreting it differently, as defiance, as plea, as threat. And somewhere across the city, Alyssa wrote, unaware, or perhaps perfectly aware, that her silence was shaping them more than her presence ever had. Chapter 12. Whispers at dawn. The city woke with a throat clearing of buses and gulls. Upstairs, Alyssa poured tea and watched steam lift, a quiet weather pattern she could control. On her desk, last night's pages waited with the patience of tools that know their owner will return. Her phone lit with a message from Mara. Journalist circling again. Says Invisible Rich is a trend piece, not a hit job. He'll call Henley. You're clear, but I like to say the wind out loud. Alyssa typed understood and didn't send it, as if silence were a better receipt. Downstairs, the bakery rattled pans. A radio murmured a song about second chances. She imagined the day like a room with doors. One would open, the others would wait. When she dressed to go out, she chose anonymity the way other people chose jewelry. A plain coat, a hat that did not remember faces. On the stairs, she passed the building's older tenant with the lilac scarf. They nodded like spies whose codes were courtesy and weather. At the corner, a pair of Cartwright cousins, expanded family, the kind one inherits like furniture, stood with coffee cups and voices pitched just above gossip. Did you read the Finch thing? One asked. Whoever she is, it's a she. Ring the bell, you can hear it. She must be local. Alyssa waited for the light. The cousin's reflection hovered in a storefront. If they turned, they would see a woman watching the city instead of seeing them. The way safety often looks like disinterest. The walk steadied her. Locks, books, keys. The bookshop door chimed. Rowan glanced up, half-smile already prepared. We got more Finches, he said. They keep leaving and coming back like birds that forgot migration. Alyssa set her bag behind the counter, pressed her palm to the desk's worn edge, and returned without flourish to the visible world. Chapter 13. The man in the bookshop mid-morning arrived like a chord resolved. Customers moved in drifts. A teacher bought essays as if buying rain. A teenager selected a thick fantasy and pretended not to check who was watching him be brave. The man appeared near noon, coat folded over his arm as if it were obedient. Not Cal, different. Camera strap mark on one shoulder, a notepad barely hiding in the other hand. He studied the Finch table with theatrical neutrality, then took a book and wandered toward Alyssa. Do you carry the threshold rooms signed? He asked, a question wrapped in something else. Not signed, Alyssa said. We keep bookplates. For clubs or people who like the idea of handwriting. He smiled, friendly without weight. Bookplates are interesting. A signature with its tail cut off. I'm doing a piece about hidden donors, anonymous artists. Fascinating how often the quiet live in loud places. Rowan slid closer, casual as gravity. We like privacy here, he said lightly. Of course, the man replied. I'm only shopping. He put down the Finch and picked up Fugue for Lost Cities with the same careful rhythm one uses to test a bridge. Sometimes the room tells you things the people won't. Rooms echo what they're given, Alyssa said before she could help herself. He looked at her then, truly. Not a stare. A measurement. That's a sentence, he said. My beat is sentences that leave footprints. He paid cash. He left. He didn't take a receipt. Rowan exhaled. Press. Curiosity, Alyssa said. Which is press without a deadline. They returned to the window, to paper doors that suggested choices. Behind them, the bell chimed once like a wink. Chapter 14. Letters unsent night folded itself neatly around the bakery. Alyssa took down a worn shoebox whose label meant nothing to anyone but her. Inside lay drafts she had never mailed. Letters to the mother her mother had been when she laughed first, criticized second. Letters to the father who taught precision and mistook it for love. A single letter to herself, younger, encouraging her to keep choosing rooms with windows. She read a paragraph addressed to no one and everyone. When the world refuses to see you, build a vocabulary that sees you back. Then choose who hears it. She didn't cry. The tears had been paid already, in earlier years and other apartments. She placed a fresh sheet on top of the stack and wrote a new letter she would not send. Dear Mother, there is a word noisy. That means a crowd at full volume and also the tenderness of things easily broken. I learned it in a letter to a theater. You might like the theater if it stops trying to be a mirror and decides to be a door. She folded it. She did not seal it. Some truths work better when they can breathe. Chapter 15. The Ultimatum. The Cartwright house made its own weather. Warm air, cold rules. Alyssa arrived because refusing to arrive had not yet learned her name. The chandelier shone as if it had something to prove. Her father arranged papers like chess pieces. A formality, he said, meaning a test. The partnership moves. We prefer to move as one. Her brother smirked in a way that thought it was a smile. It's easy. You sign, we stop worrying you'll drift into trivia. You're too old to be a rumor. Her mother's hands were gentle on a napkin. We want you safe, she said, and meant within reach. Alyssa placed the brass key on the linen. It caught the light and tamed it. I am safe, she said. You want me near. Her father's jaw learned a new angle. We can't be responsible for you if you insist on isolation. Then be responsible for yourselves, she said softly. Your investments will live without my name on them. You owe family, her father said, not a threat, a religion. I pay family, Alyssa replied. I just don't pay with obedience. Silence counted to 5. It would have counted longer if anyone had let it. Her mother's breath shook and recovered. Eat, she said. Please. The word landed like a blanket placed over flames, not to smother but to think. They ate. No one tasted anything. Chapter 16. A secret ally. The niece had her mother's eyes and no one's diplomacy. 16. A notebook everywhere, even at dinner. She appeared in the hallway like a question. You're Alyssa, the niece said. And also not. I read your book plates when I straightened the stock that one time. Your A's look like tints. Alyssa waited. Tints implied shelter and invention. Good omen. I won't tell, the niece said. Cheeks flushed with the thrill of having discovered a door. I'd rather help. How? Alyssa asked. The niece opened the notebook to a page of diagrams, arrows from common room to theater, from thicket to bakery coil, small hearts scribbled where money had made oxygen. In the margins, warmth equals information flow, underlined twice. You can't keep everything separate forever, the niece said in a rush. They're building a net. You need knots that aren't visible but hold. Alyssa smiled, an expression she had been rationing. What's your name? Nina, she said, as if granting a key. I'm learning to listen. Good, Alyssa said. Listening is how we avoid repeating the wrong stories. She tapped the notebook. Keep this safe. And never put real names in it. Nina nodded, solemn with the holiness of an errand. Never. Chapter 17. The double life phrase. Mara arranged an interview that wasn't an interview. A conversation without cameras where a respected critic would contextualize Finch's themes, and perhaps nudge the sales needle a notch already high. They met in a private room that smelled like leather and old bets. The critic had a voice designed for recording. The agreement was simple. Answers by email, read aloud by a voice actor. No live anything. No slips. Still, a question sliced close. Why the obsession with families who mistake ritual for love? Alyssa had written the answer days ago. Ritual is how love saves itself from weather. Sometimes the ritual stays and the love leaves. My books notice weather. She felt the live silence after the question, the way a step feels for a missing stair. A word rose, Cartwright, and she bit it in half and swallowed. Mara's hand, resting on the table, didn't move. Her stillness was a rope. Alyssa gripped it without touching. After, in the hallway, Mara said nothing for the length of a breath and then, You're good. but we're close to the edge. I'll build you a wider ledge. Edges teach balance, Alyssa said. They also teach gravity, Mar replied, and smiled as if to keep fear from learning her face. Chapter 18 The Confrontation Sunday Dinner Again. The house wore confidence like cologne. Paperwork waited in the study, glowing, sentences arranged to funnel a life into a shape. Her father spoke first because fathers in houses like this always did. We spoke with Lennox. He says anonymity is a phase. Visibility is adult. Lennox sells visibility, Alyssa said. He would. Her brother laughed. God, you're exhausting. Imagine if all that cleverness were assigned to something that returns a dividend. It does, she said. You just don't get a statement. Her mother touched pearls that had learned all the family verbs. Darling, if you are helping people hypothetically, let us help you help them. There are efficiencies. Efficiencies turn mercy into product, Alyssa said. Mercy should remain expensive. It keeps us honest. Her father's tone shifted into the velvet used for verdicts. You will sign or we will proceed without you. You will proceed either way, Alyssa said. Only one path lets me keep liking your faces when I remember them. For a second, something like admiration crossed her father's expression and vanished, embarrassed to be seen. Chapter 19 The breaking point. The article dropped on a Tuesday afternoon, smart and careful. It did not name Alyssa. It named a pattern. 3 trusts with peculiar habits, a cluster of small rescues timed like ritual. It wondered aloud if the city's myth of rugged philanthropy had a single hand at the tiller. Online readers did what readers do, spun names out of air. One comment said Finch must be a lawyer. Another said she was a nurse. Someone wrote you can hear her commas. At the bookshop, a woman brought the threshold rooms to the counter with the reverence of a relic. If I ever met her, the woman said, I'd say thank you for the paragraphs that made me forgive myself for staying. Alyssa wrote a bookplate carefully. For Marta, who already knows how to walk out when she's ready. She slid it across. The woman's eyes filled. Alyssa looked down. Sometimes seeing is rude. Rowan refilled a display then leaned in. You okay? I prefer ghost stories when the ghosts don't carry mirrors, Alyssa said. He made a face that was almost a joke and then wasn't. You got people who'd stand between you and a mirror if you asked. I know, she said. She did know. Knowledge did not undo design. Chapter 20. Shadows in the hall. Night narrowed the street until cars moved like thoughts. Alyssa climbed the stairs and heard it before she saw anything. A soft pause at her door, as if someone had put a hand on the wood to feel the temperature of her life. She set down her bag without sound. The brass key lay against her skin like a promise learning to be a plan. A second pause. A breath on the other side. The building's pipes chose that moment to speak, old metal gossiping in the walls. The shadow withdrew then returned. A slip of paper slid under the door. No knock. No retreating footsteps. She waited a full minute. 2. She picked up the paper. A single line printed from a cheap home machine. Some nets hold you. Some are for catching. Decide which one you are building. No signature. No threat. Advice that could wound or warn depending on the hand. She laid the paper on the table beside the key. She opened the laptop. The document blinked awake. She titled the next chapter with something that would read like a metaphor and behave like a plan. She wrote, Information flows toward warmth. Then another line, so do people. Build the warmth you can control. She saved in 3 places. She breathed in sugar and air and a street that believed in tomorrow. The night held still. Then moved. Chapter 21 Rumors in print. The article arrived like weather. Announced, discussed, unavoidable. Ghost donors and the architecture of mercy, the headline said, as if philanthropy could be drawn with a ruler. It did not name her. It described a geography. A modest apartment near a bakery, a clerk at a neighborhood bookshop, Thursday wires, letters precise to the comma. It was nothing and too much. Alyssa read it once at the kitchen counter, tea cooling against her palm. The author's voice was careful, almost reverent. Not all power wants a podium. Some prefers a ledger and a locked drawer. She recognized the cadence of someone trying to honor the secret while touching it. That kind of touch could bruise. Downstairs, the oven coughed, then settled. The city moved on with its morning chores. She reached for the brass key on its chain and set it flat on the table. When objects become symbols, rooms begin to overhear you, Henley once said. She smiled despite herself. Her phone buzzed. "Ma, we're okay. Articles fog, not flood. But the room is humid. I'll run a dehumidifier." Alyssa typed thank you and sent it. She opened the window an inch. Cold came in carrying bakery sugar and bus diesel, and the reminder that human breath is weather, too. Across town, portraits watched a family read the same piece in different keys. Her father underlined architecture. Her brother circled bookshop clerk and drew a star. Her mother didn't annotate. She set the paper down and put her hand on it, as if to quiet it. The day stood up. It had things to do. So did Alyssa. She closed the window, pocketed the key, and went to the world that believed her name was Anna. Chapter 22. A brother's hunt. He had always loved the chase more than the quarry. The quarry, once caught, insisted on rules and returns. The chase required only appetite. Her brother arrived at the bookstore pretending to browse. He flipped spines with the care of a man who wanted to be seen not damaging anything. Rowan greeted him with the politeness reserved for customers and landlords. Alyssa lifted a stack of paperbacks to the table in the window and arranged them like a quiet argument. "Anna," her brother said, tasting the syllables for weakness, "I wanted to thank whoever did this display. It makes choosing feel like discovery." "Displays don't make people choose," Alyssa said, not looking up. "They make rooms honest about the choices already in them." He laughed because he always laughed when he felt measured. "That's a line a novelist might write. Or a clerk who's read one," she said, and adjusted a cut paper door so its hinge of tape wouldn't show. He watched her hands. They were unadorned, efficient. He watched her sentences. They had weight. He thought of commas in that letter at the gala they hadn't yet had. A trick of time his mind performed because it liked to rearrange cause and effect until they saluted. He bought a book he would never read and left a card he hoped would be kept. Outside he texted a friend. "I have a seam. Pulling." The friend replied with an invoice emoji. Comedy for men who feared sincerity. From the corner Nina watched him go. She closed her notebook, where she had drawn a small net whose knots were hearts. "He's not listening," she said to Rowan. "He's auditioning for himself," Rowan said. "Bad role." He glanced at Alyssa. She was breathing like a swimmer who knows exactly how long water can be a friend. Chapter 23. The Family Ultimatum documents gleamed under lamplight. Gold clipped like a small crown on a paper kingdom. Lennox stood by the fireplace, its heat rehearsed. Her father at the head of the table. Her mother composed, her brother pleased with the stage. "Alyssa," her father said, name precise, voice tempered. "We have patterns. We have dates. We have phrasing." He tapped a page. "If you will not join us, you will be exposed by the careless. We would prefer to be the careful." Alyssa placed the brass key on the table, as if it were an instrument used to tune rooms. "You want control," she said. "Call it what you want. It makes planning easier." Her brother slid a folder forward. "We have a consultant who says Laura Finch is a manufactured absence. Efficient. But a liability if an enemy fills it for you." "The only enemies you have are mirrors," Alyssa said quietly. Her mother's eyes flicked. The smallest flinch. "Darling, we want you safe," she said, voice softening into something that knew how to bleed without stain. Lennox coughed, the genteel kind. "Visibility can sometimes lower risk," he offered. "Less chasing, fewer rumors, clearer paths." "Visibility invites doors you cannot close," Alyssa replied. "Rumors are a tax on privacy. I pay taxes." Her father's mouth became a line, then a door. "I cannot watch you play at danger because the dream of secrecy flatters your sense of exception." Alyssa looked at him for a long beat. "And I cannot watch you confuse inheritance with leadership." Something like a crack, but very small, moved across the air between them. It did not make a sound. Not yet. Chapter 24. Allies in quiet places. They met where rooms learned to listen. The back of the bookstore, the small theater's lobby before the lights warmed, a cafe where steam wrote short letters on cold windows. Rowan slid a mug toward her. "You can keep being a ghost," he said. "But ghosts get tired of holding their breath. Find a mask you can breathe through." Nina arrived breathless from a bus and a decision. I made a map, she said, unfolding pages full of arrows and tiny notes. Warmth info. No paper where paper is power. Doors that open inward are safer in crowds. She pointed to a box labeled Gala. They want a speech. Give them a letter. Letters travel further than voices and can choose their readers. Alyssa smiled. You're 16. I'm listening, Nina said, as if that made her older. Perhaps it did. Cal appeared as if summoned by coincidence. He held 2 tickets to the conservatory's Thursday recital. 15 chairs, he said. 1 empty in case you need an exit. Not all invitations are traps. They sat with the kind of silence people earn. Outside, snow chose to begin again. Inside, Alyssa set the brass key on the center of the table. If I have to be seen, she said, I want to choose the sentence that does the seeing. Rowan nodded. Then write the sentence. We'll carry the room. Nina wrote carry the room in her notebook, then underlined it hard enough to dent 2 pages. Chapter 25. The gala invitation. The gala rehearsed its glamour like a chorus line. Florists with clipboards, lighting testing the cheekbones of money. A string quartet that could be louder and chose not to be. In the green room, voices calibrated importance. Her mother checked lists and remembered to breathe. Sonia from the committee breezed in trailing competence. If we get the Finch message, we open with it. Then the check reveal, then the video. Her mother's phone buzzed. An email. A letter will arrive by courier at 6. Read as written. Do not announce the sender. The work speaks. Signed agent for the author. A postscript in the precise shorthand of true promises. Donation instructions enclosed. Her mother closed her eyes for a second and saw the dining room. The brass key on linen. Her daughter's jaw learning new angles. Thank you, she typed, to no one, to everyone. At 6 on the dot, the courier arrived, gloved hand extending a sealed envelope and a thin folder. The envelope was heavy without being important. The letterhead was plain. The commas would, later, rearrange a room. Her father checked his cufflinks in a mirrored panel. We will need to control the narrative, he said, to no one, to everyone. Control first, generosity second. Otherwise, generosity becomes theater. Her mother slid the envelope into her bag. Sometimes theater is the only room where people hear properly, she said. He did not answer. He hadn't been invited to. Chapter 26. The letter that shifts the room. They dimmed the hall to a hush. The tuned quiet that makes applause feel like rain when it comes. Sonia introduced the cause, the numbers, the message. We have received a letter, she said, and the room leaned forward as one organism with chandeliers. Her mother took the stage with a sheet of paper that could have been an ordinary page in a book. She did not say Laura Finch, she said. From a writer who prefers doors to mirrors. She read. Some illnesses are loud. Some are quiet and polite until breath is expensive. I have no speech for you, only sentences that know how to stand on their own. I do not appear because the work appears in my place. I do not sign because signatures are invitations for people who like to be found. You do not need a face to do the mercies we call small. You need a practice. You need a room with 15 chairs where a student can play a song that apologizes without surrendering. You need nurses who put music on while they change dressings. You need a ledger that remembers what pain forgot. The world loves visibility because it can applaud it. The world survives on what is written in the quiet. Use this money. Don't thank me. Thank the work that wants to live in the light even when the hand that carried it prefers the shade. With attention to the small and the noisy. The last phrase landed like a key turning. Her mother's voice did not break, but her breath did. The audience applauded as if given permission. Cameras stayed in pockets because the room understood, briefly, the difference between recording and remembering. Her father did not clap at first. He watched commas align like scaffolding. Her brother clapped too hard because he had not yet found a way to hear. Backstage, Sonia grabbed the envelope with donation instructions and whispered, "It's a miracle." Her mother, steadied by an old instinct, corrected gently, "It's a practice." Chapter 27. The father's reckoning. He sat alone with 2 copies of the letter. One creased from hands, one immaculate from the printer. He read it aloud to the empty study, listening for his daughter's gait in the lines. Language, he told associates, is a contract. Tonight, language was also a mirror. He preferred contracts, attention to the small and the noisy. He remembered a theater letter he had been shown, precise to the comma. He thought of hospital ledgers that cleared like a sky after a patient storm. He thought of a brass key offered like a theory no one else was prepared to defend. He stood and the room did not move. "If it is her," he said to the portrait that had never answered. "If it is, what then?" The portrait remained certain. Paintings are allowed to. He saw for a moment that made him angry with himself, the house as a machine that turned family into product. He had believed this a virtue. He had taught it to be a virtue. He thought of a child hiding behind a chair with a book, emerging new-faced for dinner. He had named it shyness. Perhaps it had been rehearsal. The door opened. His wife entered carrying a small box, a ribboned card from a donor, a program from the conservatory recital. She set them on his desk. "Listen," she said, "not a request. Not for proof. For the shape of a sentence." He read again. The words did not change. He did. Chapter 28. The mother's confession. They met in the apartment above the bakery in the late afternoon light that makes dust look like kindly weather. Alyssa had put water on without asking if tea was wanted. She knew the answer to that is always yes, even when it is no. Her mother stood near the window, hands quiet. "I have practiced being seen my whole life," she said. "I thought it was the only way not to disappear. You have practiced something else." "I was afraid of it. I made rules where I should have made room." Alyssa waited. The kettle began its small sermon. "I suspected," her mother went on, "in pieces. The thrift of your words. The way you placed kindness so it never humiliated anyone. Your commas." She smiled, quick and ashamed. "Who recognizes a child by commas?" "A mother," Alyssa said, and felt the floor learn a new kind of strength beneath them. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," her mother said. "I'm asking for new instructions. How do I love you now, when visibility is not the currency you trade in?" Alyssa poured. "You don't have to announce me. You don't have to protect me. Just do not hand me to anyone. Not for dinner conversation. Not for papers. Not even for pride." Her mother nodded. "And if I am asked?" "Say you don't know," Alyssa said. "And mean you know me." From below, the bakery bell chimed, and someone laughed as if the day had offered change for a large bill. Chapter 29. Choosing the audience. She wrote the choice first. The action would follow. A public that applauds cannot hold a secret. A family that learns does not need to be told. Nina arrived with an envelope, starstruck by errands that mattered. "You said to bring it when it felt right," she said. "It feels right." Inside was a single page. "I will never appear. But I will no longer hide from you. Ask me the questions you can ask without papers." That evening, Alyssa arrived at the Cartwright house with no coat to hand anyone, because the air was already warm. She walked into the dining room and set the brass key in the center of the table, the way some people place bread. Her father stood. He did not reach for documents. He reached for a chair and pulled it back for her. It was not surrender. It was a new muscle attempting its first useful work. "I am Laura Finch," she said. No flourish. No witness stand. A sentence poured like water into a clean glass. Her brother's mouth opened and could not decide on a shape. Her mother had already known, and still, hearing it made a sound only she could hear. Her father nodded once, a gesture that acknowledged two sovereignties. "We will not use your name," he said. "We will not use your work." He hesitated, a man learning unfamiliar grammar. "We will ask when we can if you would like dinner. Without papers." "Sometimes," Alyssa said. "Sometimes is a practice," her mother murmured as if blessing the table. Chapter 30. A novelist's freedom. Morning again. The city set its instruments. Delivery trucks tuned. Steam found its key. Alyssa woke before the alarm she never set. She moved to the desk, touched the brass key, opened the laptop. The machine recognized her like a friend who doesn't require explanation. She titled the document something only she would decode later. Room with 15 chairs. She wrote the first sentence with the calm of someone who had practiced for years for this particular beginning. The world applauds what it can see. The world survives on what is written in the quiet. She paused, not to doubt but to listen. In the hallway, a neighbor coughed twice, then sang one bar of something hopeful. On her phone, a text from Mara. France still adores you. Also, they'll try to lure you into a stage. I told them the stage is the page. Donation receipts attached. You are solvent. Another from her mother. Soup tonight. No speeches. And one from Nina. A photograph of an empty chair with a caption, saved. Alyssa smiled. She saved the file in 3 places. Cloud encrypted drive. Hidden partition that required the key and a sentence only she would ever remember. She placed the key beside the keyboard, where sunlight could find it and do nothing to it. Downstairs, the oven thumped, then exhaled sweetness up through the boards. She wrote the second sentence before she had finished reading the first. Then the third. She did not armor her commas. She did not apologize to air. Outside, the city applauded its own logistics. Inside, a novel assembled itself with the same patient ferocity as bread. Alyssa was invisible to most of the world on purpose. An infinite where it counted. The work did not wave. It walked. And the room at last knew which audience it was built to hold.